Well, hello everybody. Welcome to the show today. It is Comics News Today for the 21st of March. Wow. Wow. One more week and then we're into April. Yeah. I don't know. Is that good? I don't know. But it's
I
a
don't
different
either.
month. I know that. But we're coming up on being 1 month into Russia's 2 months of probing. So, operation. So, that's good. Yeah. But anyway, how are you today?
Swell. The wife and I went for a nice long walk. Um, I got on the old scale and I'm back on track losing weight because last fall was pretty rough. So we kind of just got off the horse a little bit. We didn't get all the way off. Like we didn't go and gain 30 pounds or anything, but
Sure.
a couple extra pounds got put back on, and I've gotten back on the horse here.
Well,
So
that's
that's
good.
a good thing.
Well, it,
And
it
I
is a process. Yeah.
Yeah. So I've got probably about 30 more pounds to go. Once I get about 30 more pounds off, then I'll just go into full maintenance mode and maybe try and build some muscle before I get too old. Because I'd like to actually be be fit again. I haven't been what I would consider fit in 15 years. So I would like to give that a shot. See what this old body can do.
Yeah,
Because
it's nice.
I see these men who are older than me, but
Hmm.
at least 10 years older than me, in an insane shape.
Oh yeah.
And for some reason, I always had this conception, which obviously is a misconception, that that's just not something that can happen when you're older.
Oh
But
no,
it's just not true.
it can.
Yeah,
Look at Frank
there's some
Grillo,
men in.
for Christ's
Oh
sake,
my
man.
gosh, there's some dudes who are just in insane shape. Herschel Walker,
Yeah.
he's older than you, and he's just ripped, just jacked out of his mind.
Yeah.
So I'm like, you know what? I want to try that. I want to see how good a shape I can get in. I'm not going to try and get shredded or anything, but I wouldn't mind putting on some mass.
Yeah. Why not? I mean, there's you can always do that. I mean, the real problem getting older is just simply it's not stamina, it's the stamina of energy, right? It's a little bit different, but yeah, Hi, but we got Roger, Dave in here, Joshua. Welcome guys. Do go over there and hit that like button if you would, and share it out. Like to get as many as we can in here with our little comic book conversation. As far as me, what I've been doing, well, I don't know. It's raining, so what else is there to do? I don't know, sex. That's about it.
Yeah, hey,
Yeah,
it's good workout if you're doing it right.
yeah, that's true.
Burn
That
some
is true.
calories.
Yeah, but gray days have their uses as well. But
Sure.
I am, of course, one thing I've been doing on the side, other than just being busy as a bee, is dealing with the boat. I have
Oh,
it dry docked, and I've been doing renovations on the inside. I've been doing a lot of that. I'm usually a person who just kind of hire somebody, but I'm actually doing that work myself. Um,
oh,
yeah, yeah. Now some of the carving and stuff like that, because I'm not going to do a complete just crazy interior carving, but there are a few post beams and things like that I want to get carved. I hired out a professional for that,
right.
and I'm kind of going the Nordic, runic look on those few pieces. But the rest of it is just
And
clean it up, restain it, put it on, replacing carpet, with wood and teak decking. I've just been busy doing those kind of things in the moments I have, and I should have her ready to drop in the water by, ooh, I don't know, maybe May, maybe,
Oh,
probably June.
all right, Chester, I'm coming over. We're going sailing.
Yep,
It's happening.
yep,
Let's
yep.
do it.
No, absolutely.
I haven't been sailing in years, but I do like being on the water. I do
It
like it.
is. It is great. Yeah. One of the things because teardown is easy and quick. I don't know if any of you
Yeah.
have ever done teardown of anything, but it is pretty quick. And of course, by tearing everything down and getting it out, and so I'm keeping some of it. Cabinetry. I'm just gonna sand it down and restain it. Right? Why not? Because this is a pretty old boat. But I went. And of course, I have when I got the boat licensed and insured, you have to bring in a person to do testing, and they go over. They're very thorough about boats, right? Just and airplanes and boats, it's much more thorough than a car. But anyway, I kind of was able to get down into the bilge, and I was able to see all the kind of bottom stuff. It's in really good shape for its age. It's been well maintained, but of course, it's a Japan boat, so the Japanese tend to be pretty efficient in those things, and Like I told you, I'm replacing the motor, right? Putting a
Interesting.
new, more energy efficient. What a good choice I made. Yeah, because I
Yeah.
didn't know we were going to get hammered like this. But I decided, well, that's a really old motor. She's sucking gas like crazy. I've had to repair it a couple times on the fly already. And, but diesel motors are pretty easy to work on. I don't know if you guys have any kind of engine experience. Diesel's pretty easy. But I've replaced it with a Yanmar, and that was a smart move. I'm probably going to save, I don't know, 40+% on costs.
Mhm.
Because
Nice.
one of the problems with sailing though is you tend to be under power a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, Mother Nature doesn't always cooperate.
no, I mean, there's certain places like if you're in the Caribbean or you're in the Mediterranean, you're going to be under sail quite a bit, but
Right.
other places not as much. But anyway, yeah, I'm really happy about some of that stuff, and I've seen the guy who's doing the he's a really good carver. He works for because I have a lot of contacts with artisans and stuff, and he works mainly what he does is temples and shrines is the work he
Nice.
does, right? So he's a touch bit more expensive than I could have got, but I know the work's going to be done perfectly, right? And
Right.
I gave him some ideas on what I wanted. I'm going with the runic stuff, and he did some it's weird. It's like full sized strip reproductions on paper is what he did. And I went and looked at them. They look good, dude. I can't wait to see them on the wood. Anyway, that has nothing to do with comic books, by the way.
I had muted myself there because I coughed. Forgot to unmute myself. Um, yeah, no, that's awesome. I have always loved that, like those Norse runic style and Celtic runic style. I think it's a grave disservice to the heritage of our people that more people don't get involved with that,
Yeah.
whether it's because of weird Christian dogma or whatever. Um,
Well, it's our
I
history,
just
man.
think it's just cool. Like it's just real. They had some real.
Yeah.
The whole aesthetic is very unique globally, and it's a shame that there's not more of it throughout. We have a lot of like Roman and Greek and English, uh, like aesthetics all throughout America, especially, but not a lot of Norse. And that's odd to me because there's a lot of Norsemen that live here, a lot of Scandinavians. So you would think it would come over, but it didn't really, largely.
Yeah. No.
And they were here first of us, of the Europeans. They got here before us,
Oh
before
yeah, no,
everybody
they
else.
were there a long time ago. Yeah, that's a whole
Yeah.
conversation right there. But I did tent the thing already, and I have taken all the paint off. And it had a gel coat on it, which means someone had done it since because I don't think it came with a gel coat originally. But so someone had repainted it in the past 20 some years. But I took that all off. There's no problems. It looks really good. I'll paint that last, right? Which I'll get a professional because I don't want that would be stupid for me to do it. But I do have my paint scheme. It's going to be white with black bottom and silver trimming, right? Because the name of the boat, I don't know if I've ever told you the name of my boat. My boat is called the Ertglam.
Erklam.
Which means silver hand, which is of
Yes,
course named after Nuada or the in the Nordic Tyr, right?
I like that. I
Yeah,
like
no,
that.
it's
That's
cool.
good.
I was thinking about just calling it Tyr because it's kind of cool. It's kind of cool. But
Well, he is the best
he
here.
is, he is cool.
He's the
Uh,
best of all of them.
Right. But by putting it to my harbor here, that I'm where I live, of course, you can the harbor is the main thing, and so you could put a name. So therefore, you'll have many boats around the world that have the same name, but they're at a different harbor, so that's okay. But
Right.
there's a lot of boats called Tier, a lot.
Yeah, I
Uh,
bet.
I went and checked, and I was like, okay. So yeah, no. And I just did a sticker thing for the name. Now it's going to be, put in by a professional. So that's cool.
Right.
But of course, I didn't. I just said, well, don't go with tier, and I just kind of went, nerdy about it. But anyway, let's see. Jack LaLanne, man. Yeah, no, Jack LaLanne was badass. Dave says 18 powerful charms for protections, success in battle, lovemaking, healing, and powers to bring back the dead. Dude, I'm on that shit, man. Don't you worry about it, Dave. I got it. I know. Especially the lovemaking one. I have that in the bedroom. Okay.
Ooh,
Roger says, "Hey Chester, are the Japanese news talking about the Boeing the what? The Boeing fell out of the sky 135 loss. Of course they are. I don't well I imagine the West doesn't care, but of course we do. It sucks, dude. Man, that's a intra-country, international flight. It's a Boeing 737. I've been on those many times when I was younger. Those planes are getting old though. But yeah, I mean, sad man. They just crashed into a mountain. It's a shame. This is in China, by the way. I don't know if you saw that news.
I did
And
not.
yeah, yeah, it's sad, man. I mean, I understand culture and nationalism, and I can bitch about this and that, but I have compassion, Thundero. I don't want people dead. You know.
Well, I don't want people dead either, but there's some humans walking around. They could go. They
Yeah,
could
no,
go.
that's fair. I mean, it's weird. That's a weird thing for me because logically, I've never agreed with the death penalty because it doesn't make sense to me why the punishment for murder is murder, logically. But
Okay.
spiritually, there's some people that need killing.
Yeah, they just got to go.
Yeah, they just need
Time for
killing.
you to go.
Yeah.
For you
I
to go.
mean,
We don't. Whatever you were going to give to the world, you probably missed the boat sailed. Go on now.
yeah, but you see, I have a little bit of a a, a conflict here.
Yeah,
Yeah. But mob justice maybe is the solution. Anyway,
it's
but
a solution. I don't know if it's the solution,
it
but
is
it's
a
a
solution.
solution.
That's true. Well, glad you guys are in here. I'm going to give it a couple minutes before I get into today's thing. But we are, of course, talking about comic books today. So wanted to talk a little bit. I've asked you before what your favorite comic book character was, but today I'm going to ask you, Thundero, and the chat as well. Please respond, guys. What is your favorite team?
Ooh, well, that's easy.
Okay,
For me, that's easy anyway. Are you asking me right now?
I am.
Am I up?
Yeah.
I'm up. X-Men. Easy one. The especially I believe it was Claremont's run mainly, but the team that was in the '90s, early '90s cartoon,
Hmm.
the books that have that specific team, which is your Rogue, your Cyclops, your Beast, obviously old Wolvie himself, and then they had a few others that would alternate out. Obviously Storm too.
Sure.
And a few others that alternate out, like occasionally Colossus would be up in there and stuff like that. But that core group right there with Storm, Wolverine, Rogue, Gambit, to me, it was just the best X-Men to me. And I've read the other stuff from all different eras, and it just I don't know, I loved it. It was very well done. I think the characters were well made at the time. They all had a great dynamic. There was tension where there needed to be tension, but they would come together and do what needed to be done. Storm was fantastically written at that time. She was maybe the best character in the whole team. And I am obviously a big mark for lightning powers, so love me some Storm. Plus, she was hot. That didn't hurt.
Didn't hurt.
And of course, Wolverine he's just cool. Like
He
it
is.
doesn't matter. You don't need a whole bunch of explanations for him. He's just cool. He's James Dean cool. That's it.
He is.
That's all.
That's
That's all
true.
he's got to be.
That's true.
And yeah, so for me, it's X Men. I also really like a lot of their villains. I like Magneto. I think he's a fantastic villain, especially when he's written well, because he's not totally wrong, right? That's one of the things that makes a good villain is they have to kind of be right, but they have to obviously, have a wrong interpretation of the right that they have, or something to that effect, right? Um, where he's not totally wrong that humans have always treated others horribly, so for him, the solution to that is to just treat them horribly, right? Just
Right.
just take them, oppress them before they can oppress the mutants, basically. Which sounds very familiar.
Yeah.
Um, but no, he's not totally wrong in that regard. Like humans we are pretty much the worst,
That's true.
and he has a case, right? Especially being Auschwitz and all that stuff. Uh, so he has a pretty strong case, and he's compelling, and he's intimidating, and one thing villains have lost, and one of the reasons why I think Thanos was so good is they've lost the ability to be imperious, to have this commanding aura about them.
Yeah.
And Magneto's got that coming out of every orifice. Like
Yeah, he does. He is
he's
imperious.
that dude.
That is true.
And I think that's one of the reasons I like him so much because Xavier is very authoritative, but he's not imperious, right? He's a different type of guy. He's much more intellectual in that regard.
Well, he's more
Whereas
sneaky.
yeah, he's a trickster. Whereas Magneto is far more, you know, in a way, kind of more honorable.
Well, he's much
But
more noble. Yeah.
yeah, but it's a like a twisted nobility because his end goal is obviously wicked.
Yep.
He doesn't see it that way, of course, but to everybody else, that's how you're supposed to see it, and that's I think that's probably correct.
Yeah. Well,
But
look what Hickman's done,
yeah,
because of his Taggart storyline, which I thought was interesting. Xavier is now on board with Magneto. He is the same as Magneto now.
yeah,
It's
yeah,
interesting. Yeah.
which is utterly silly. Like the
Oh
reason
well.
why their dynamic works is because they're very similar intellects insofar as they have very similar interests, but they have completely separated ideologies insofar as how to treat people.
Yeah,
And
that's true.
that's why it works. That's why they're good friends because they do get along in everything else except that.
Right.
That's the one point of contention they can never get past.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and Jeff here's a cheesehead. Good for you, dude. But I think with Hickman, I like Hickman's stuff. And like I said, the guy has a plan from day one where
Yes.
he stepped into Marvel. He's got a plan, and I respect that. Right? He's a pretty good writer too, and therefore he gets the best artist on his stuff. He doesn't get the crap experimental stuff, right?
Yeah.
However, one of the big problems with Hickman is he's a bridge burner, right?
Yeah.
And his storyline is kind of, especially with the X-Men. What are you going to do with that? You have
Right.
proven now that no matter what, the mutants get wiped out.
Yes.
They're going to lose. There's no way around it. You've done that. You can't back up Xavier now because he understands that Moira is right. And
Right.
it's unarguable. He can't do it. So even if you take his memory away, well, then he's an ill actor, right?
Right.
So this is the problem with Hickman. I don't know how you go forward with that, seeing as in the backdrop, you have this idea that, well, it doesn't really matter what they're doing, it doesn't matter what crisis you're doing, or what storyline you're doing, it's all for naught.
Correct.
So, I mean, this is a big problem with Hickman.
Well, you
Uh,
could do something really cool with that insofar as like you could teach a lesson in nobility. And what I mean by that is I go back to Angel, right? The show Angel. The last episode,
mhm,
the moral question that they ask is even if we know that no good will really come of it, would we still do the right thing? And they all of the heroes obviously come to the conclusion that yes, they would, because it's the right thing to do.
right.
Um, so you can play with that, because the concept of inevitability. Everything's going to end one day. What is it worth being moral and noble and righteous, even
Well, of
though
course,
the end is coming?
but
But
I mean, you
there's
have
only
that
so many
backdrop,
times you can play with that,
right?
right? Like
Yeah,
you can only tell that same story so many times before it's like, okay, that's enough. Like,
yeah.
just let's shuffle on here.
Yeah, and I really, I feel what that has done, with what Hickman done. If you've seen some of the kind of outside actions, with that, because you talk about the X Men being your favorite team, but I mean they got X Force, you got New Mutants, you got Excalibur, you got wow, there's many of them, right? There's many
Mhm.
teams, and what they're doing with X Men right now, not Hickman himself, but people outside of Hickman use doing it. They're kind of making the X Men these. Mutants in general, these things like, well, we're more, we know we're going to fail, but we're morally right and we're superior to humans, therefore we might as well kill them. That's what they have going on in X-Men. The mutants have become kind of the villain, and I don't like that at all. And of course, we know there's a little bit of the message in there, as well, which just makes it more disgusting. But
Yes.
yeah, Hickman. I mean, I like Hickman, but I also think he screwed it up pretty hardcore. Roger here says, I like the team Fantastic Four. Well, they're a good team, dude. That's an old
Yeah.
classic team that's been around forever.
Yeah.
Yeah. Bob says he didn't like how Hickman ended his run. I think a lot of people didn't. I mean, it's weird because Hickman, we like Hickman, but we don't like Hickman. Joshua said, wouldn't the TMT count? Yes, they most certainly too would do.
Of
Teenage
course.
Mutant Ninja Turtles are a great team, man.
When I was younger, that would have been my answer. When I was like a kid, oh,
Yeah,
I loved Turtles, man.
sure.
I had every Turtles toy that I could get my hands on. I had all the games. Had all the movies. I was a big old Turtles mark. I loved them.
Yeah,
Love me some Turtles.
and their recent Ronin run they got going on is pretty good.
Yeah,
Of course,
good.
that's not team, but you know what I mean.
Yeah.
Rabbit says, "Hey guys, well, hello, Rabbit. We're asking what's your favorite comic book team." Bob says the X Men are villains now. They are, and they've abandoned Xavier's dream. So has and most importantly, Bob, Xavier has abandoned his dream because he knows the
Uh,
truth, and that's my point with Hickman because this is canon. This is straight up canon, and Xavier can never have that dream again because he knows that the dream is a lie. So I mean,
right.
it's a problem. I mean, how do you fix it? You don't.
I would fix it by. I mean, they've done this multiple times recently, which is that's a bigger problem. But I think personally, the X Men need retooled entirely. They need to go
Mhm.
back to formula. They need to go back to the most popular versions of it, whatever that is. Even if it's not my favorite, I don't know which one is. But whatever one is the most popular version of the X Men, whatever team was, go back to that and just basically do like a reboot of them. Because I think it's kind of gotten to the point now where it's so muddied, like you're saying, and they've put on this definite ending. Like,
They do. Oh
what are we
yeah,
doing here?
absolutely. Yeah,
It,
yeah,
they've we can't really go any further than that. Now, I'm not against a definite ending, but I think once you've established it, playing around too much in the weeds before you get to it, you just end up in the situation like you're talking about, where people have to basically abandon what they stood for to keep going, to make sure the story can keep going. And I don't think that's good storytelling.
yeah. Cool. Rabbit agrees with Ninja Turtles. Dave says, "Does GI Joe count?" Yes, of course they count, dude. GI Joe is an awesome team.
Right. That's right.
Absolutely. My answer is kind of boring. But in actuality, though, what is the actual best comic book team? It's Justice League, without question. It's not
Ooh,
my choice, but it is the best. And the reason I say that is because the Justice League is the most organized team in comic books.
yeah.
They have all their bases set up. They're an actual organization, a well running, smooth organization, where a lot of the organizations in Marvel are kind of on the outskirts of society. They're privately funded, stuff like that. It's just not as efficient. The Justice League is a real thing. Yeah, yeah,
Right.
if you know what I mean.
They're
Uh,
practically a paramilitary group, to
well,
be
they are.
honest. They're,
It's
they're
what they
so
are.
well trained and maintained and
Yeah.
things. And you
So,
can thank Bruce for that largely. Uh,
oh yeah,
that's
definitely,
that's
100%
one of the
Bruce.
problems I have with modern like movies and things. Well, any of the movies about Bruce is none of them ever get that part right. The Nolan movie started too near the end, but then he threw all that. Well, the second movie, then he threw all that away in the third movie, where Bruce isn't just a crusader and a playboy, right? He's also a very, very good administrator,
Oh yeah.
extremely good. That might actually be one of his best talents. He knows how to handle resources and get things done without himself actually doing it. And I think that's something that's lost in a lot of the tellings, because either he's completely aloof to the way his family's, company is run, or he pretends he's aloof to it, or he's not into it at all in any way. Like he has someone else doing it basically.
Right.
And I don't like that. I think Bruce should be able to be all of wear all of those hats.
Yeah.
Personally, that's just my opinion.
Yeah, that's fair. My answer is the Avengers, though.
Oh,
I'm a big Avengers fan. I've been that way from the beginning. Of course, keep in mind that way back in those days, before we had crossover crisis or and crisis every single year, these kind of teams were created to kind of do this interactive storyline between various superheroes. Right, that's where they came from, and I think Avengers did it really well because X-Men has always been outside the rest of Marvel's storyline, right?
yeah,
It's its own thing, it's its own world. But Avengers is really a place where you could take any of your ailing superheroes that you have, and you can throw them in the Avengers, right? And I've enjoyed the Avengers for quite a while. Of course, I love X Men, and I love all the stuff you guys have mentioned. It's all good, but personally, I'm an Avengers guy. However, speaking of X Men, though, I do want to get into our show today. You ready?
Do it.
All right.
Let's do it.
Okay. So, of course, you guys know I've been wanting to start out comic books and things like that. Heroes and things. Today, I decided to go with a comic book, though.
Comic book. Uh-oh.
So,
Uh-oh.
something a little different. Something a little different.
Speaking of which, look at them. Look at them X-Men.
Yeah. Speaking of the X-Men. Now, this right here is, of course, Giant Size X-Men #1. Now, most comic book fans, and of course we're talking about American comic book fans, would consider this one of the most important books ever made. Some would actually say it's the most important comic book ever made, and the reason for that is very simple. This started out the epic 17-year run of Mister Claremont,
Yeah.
right? And his run was absolutely epic. And I'm going to get into all that. But I wanted to really talk about because this is a very famous book. It really is, right? And I didn't actually get this book or read it until way later. I certainly started reading X-Men around the end of the 70s, early 80s, I'm sure. But at the time, I was a little kid and I got a comic book here or there, right? Because my parents would never give me money for anything. So it was only my grandma that would pick up a comic for me every now, let me buy one every now and then. So it wasn't until I was older. And I told you one of my first jobs I ever had, I made my own little lawn mowing business when I was 12. And the reason I did that because I wasn't given any money for nothing. I couldn't buy anything. I couldn't get the little gumball stuff. I couldn't do anything. So I
Right.
wanted my own money so that I could buy comic books and candy and fireworks and that kind of stuff. And that's when I really started collecting comic books. Was around 12, 13 years old. Before that, it was a smattering, right?
Mm,
So I didn't get this book until much later. But I wanted to talk about this book because it is important. But what it's doing, I think a lot of people don't get what it's doing, right? And I think it gets lost in the shuffle, as it were. What they
mm,
were doing here is they were taking the kind of old and tired X-Men, which you see there at the top with Beast, Angel, Cyclops, Iceman, and Jean Grey, of course, Marvel Girl. But of course, by this time, X-Men actually had plenty of Havoc was in there at that time, and there were plenty of other characters that had showed up. It wasn't just them, but they really wanted to refresh it, and they decided, well, if we're going to have the X-Men and they're supposed to be a mutant team, well, shouldn't they be more international? And that's the whole point of this comic book and then Claremont's run. If you look at all the new characters introduced, they're all from different countries. And that was the intention. That was the
right.
intention. They wanted it to be international. And this really gets lost in the shuffle a lot with X-Men, that they are an international team because we don't it just doesn't feel that way, even though that's exactly what it is.
Right.
And of course, recently they have done this book page for page. They have gone and get some of the great artists involved in the comic book industry right now have done each been given one page, some given a couple, and they've recreated this entire book with great art from different people. Alex Ross being one of them, and of course you know how I am about Alex, so I'm kind of sticking mainly Alex's stuff. But here's your original team. Of course, this is an Ross painting, and they've decided to spice it up here, and they've done it in a very interesting way. So here's the interior page one that Alex Ross was given. And you see, you have your classic team up top, but then you have all your new characters. So let's take a look at each of these new characters that were dropped in and talk about them a little bit. Of course, we have Chris Claremont here in his great run, and that's really the reason why it's important because this is where it all started. And keep in mind, this guy went 17 years on X Men. I mean, my
Pretty
God, dude.
crazy.
Anyways, take a look at it here. First and foremost, former leader of the X-Men herself, Aurora, the actual Kenyan goddess of weather.
Sir. Yes, sir.
Uh,
That's the queen. That's
there
the
she
real
is.
queen right there.
There she is.
The
And
gorgeous and the
and
powerful.
she is. She's awesome. That's a great piece of art
Yes,
there from Mr. Ross as well.
it
But
is.
what happened was in this comic book, just kind of give you a rundown what happened in the comic book. The other X Men had gone to an island where Charles was feeling this powerful mutant because at that time he was still a mutant, and they kind of changed him later. But whatever, that doesn't matter. And he sent the X Men to go deal with it, and they all got taken out. So he needed a new team to save them, right? And they
Mhm.
go to get an international team, and of course that was the introduction of Croatoa, right? The island, right? And keep in mind, in this comic book, they actually throw the island into space, by the way, which is kind of weird. But anyway,
Nice.
so he went around. He went to Africa, and she was actually living as a goddess. She thought she was a goddess, and Charles went and told her, "Well, you're not. Actually, you're just a mutant," which is kind of
Right.
rough. It's kind of rough.
Knocking you down a peg, huh?
Yeah, yeah, that's a bit rough. But the whole goddess line is something Chris Claremont always would push up with her. He'd always use
Yeah.
those kind of words when talking about her, though. But of course, you have Storm from Kenya, right? So cool, African lady, an actual African lady. Yeah,
And
which is
should be the leader of the X-Men at all times, in my opinion. I think she was
she
great
was for
as
quite a
their
while.
leader.
She was a good leader. Um,
Yeah.
and of course, Cyclops is the longest running leader of the X Men. But to be
Nobody
fair,
likes
I
Cyclops.
never cared for him either.
Yeah, nobody likes Cyclops.
Yeah. She was
He's
much cooler.
just he's just ew. There's just so much about him to dislike. It's hard to pinpoint one thing. It's great writing because it's definitely intentional.
Oh yeah.
Um, he's just like a icky kind of. Most people have worked with a guy like him, right? Like he's just sets you off.
He's a
He's just
whiny
wrong.
jock.
Yeah, he's just wrong. Like just no, just go away. You got go away heat, Cyclops. Go away.
Yeah, yeah. Poor Cyclops. And even in this comic book, he was being used by Croatoa anyway. In
Yeah,
the comic book, actually. But anyway, so here we go. We get an African lady introduced. So this is our first of the new international mutants that were brought in for this international book. Next, of course, we have my boy from Ireland, Banshee. Yeah,
Banshee, which
yeah.
doesn't make any sense that he is named
I
Banshee, but
know it's
okay.
weird. It's weird. And his what cousin is it or something like that, or there is Siren, spelled with
Yeah,
a Y. But now Banshee was you'll see with many of these, he was actually an enemy of the X-Men initially. That's when we first saw him. He's not a new character. He'd been seen before, and of course he was being controlled, and they had a bomb on his head, forcing him to attack and fight the X-Men. But here's the thing that people don't really get about Banshee, because he's a big goofy kind of character, right?
mhm,
Banshee, he came real close to taking the entire X-Men out. He is
yeah.
badass, powerful dude. He is. But he's just so goofy. But
His name
Banshee,
doesn't make any sense, but yes,
it doesn't make any sense. Yes, okay, it should, because there are female ghosts that when you hear
yes,
their
that's right.
whine, someone's going to die in your family. That's the kind of the Banshee. They're
It,
they're
it
a
has
barrow
very little
white.
to do with loud screeching. I mean, they do loudly screech, but it's not that's not really their character trait. Their character
No,
trait is that they're a harbinger of death.
they are.
That's their character trait.
Yeah, they are. Well, they're a barrow white.
Yes,
They're a type of Ishi is what they are.
that's right.
But anyway, they introduce him from Ireland, of course. So we got a Irish boy in here. Ireland doesn't get a lot of love, dude. They don't get a lot of love.
Especially not now with the ginger side.
Oh
Holy
my
cow!
God. Yeah. So, good for you, Mr. Banshee. Then we had our boy from Mother Russia.
From the
Uh,
motherland.
yeah, Peter, Cyclops.
Boy.
One of my
I always,
favorite.
I mean, I think you meant Colossus, but
Oh,
yeah, I always
Colossus.
met.
Sorry,
I
Colossus.
always
Yeah.
loved me some Colossus. He was always a good time. His power is ridiculous, but that's okay.
Yeah.
That's okay. They can have ridiculous powers. It's comic books.
Yeah.
Like the
Yeah.
fact that he can turn his skin into this metal and somehow still move doesn't make any
It's
sense.
organic metal. Organic.
Oh yeah,
Okay.
it's
But
not how metal works.
Colossus is badass. I've always loved Colossus. He
Yeah,
was the team leader initially, and Claremont decided to change that, right?
yeah, that's probably
Um,
for the
uh,
best.
yeah, because Claremont, I understand when all this happened, it was a collaboration. Chris wasn't 100% in charge. He did by the time the mid late 70s came in, he was. Colossus was the leader eventually. He was created to be the new leader, right?
Right.
Which is cool. But Colossus has always been badass. Of course, one of the great comic book storylines is him sacrificing himself during the mutant virus storyline, right? So really cool. They did my boy wrong, however, of cock blocking him and leaving him blue balled with the kitty pride. I will never
Yeah.
forgive them for that. Fuck all y'all. Okay. But
Uh,
yeah, I mean it's bullshit, dude. They always do that these days. I mean, think about this. After the Dark Phoenix run had finished, a good 3 years after that story ended, they had our Cyclops get married, right? And then against Claremont's wishes, they brought back, of course, Jean Grey. And that they was just kind of screwed up the whole thing. But at least Cyclops was allowed to get married. He could marry. He did marry, right?
mm.
Why are they doing this like that? What are they doing Batman like that for? Stop it! Stop it! And now Kitty Pryde like doesn't even like him. It's like, dude, what's wrong with you? Okay, anyway, but of course, Colossus, one of the favorites for sure. And then, arguably one of the most powerful, not powerful, but most popular comic book characters on Earth, our boy Logan.
Oh
Uh, yeah,
yeah.
yeah, he's badass.
He's
And
just he's just drips cool, man.
he
He's just
does.
everything about even though he wears in the comics these ridiculous outfits, and they are ridiculous, he still pulls off cool. That's just a level of like character work of machismo, right? That you don't get nowadays in art, most art like comic books or movies or whatever.
Yeah,
And it's for various reasons, but it's one of the reasons I'm very leery about the new X Men that are going to be coming in because if they're going to use Wolverine, if they use Logan, it's
they
going to
have
be
they have
hard to
no
pull that
choice,
off.
dude. They have to use
It's
him.
going to be hard though, man. Who are they going to get to pull that off? Because man, Jackman he just got it. He
He did.
understood
He
what
did.
he had
Yeah.
to be this character. And I don't see anybody in Hollywood right now. There could be a no name out there, somebody I haven't seen that has that charisma,
Yeah.
that raw animal charisma that
Yeah.
Wolverine has to have.
Well, in first class, they actually gave a wink to this book, right?
Hmm.
Because when Xavier goes in to recruit him, he basically looked at Xavier and said, "Yeah, I'm not impressed." Right? I mean,
Right.
he's such a hard ass. And of course, in the movie, the first class movie, they come in to try to recruit him, and he said, before they could even talk to him, he's like, "Fuck off."
Yeah.
Right? That's
Just fuck
Wolverine.
right off.
Yeah, fuck
That's right.
right the hell off. So yeah,
See
and
ya.
thank you, Bob, the Legacy Virus. Yeah, but that was a
I love
great
it because
story.
he just has no time. He has no time for people's nonsense, and he
Yep,
doesn't care if he
doesn't
hurts
give
your
a shit.
feelings about it either.
Yeah,
That's what makes him cool. It's the aloofness.
yep,
He's just so now when it comes down to it, yeah, he'll do the right thing because he's a good man. But other than that, he doesn't have any patience for your bullshit. And I
yeah.
love that
That's true.
about him. That's what makes him so good.
Yeah, it's cool. But let's see here. Comic Book Bob says, "Yeah, that Kitty Pryde shit pissed me off. They destroyed one of the great comic book romances for woke points. Yes, they did.
Yeah,
Yes, they did.
yeah.
And I think she's a lesbian now, isn't she? Or at least
Oh,
bi,
right. Of
of
course
course.
he is.
But here's the thing: I've said many times, Bob. Their intention is to destroy. They want
That's
to
right.
destroy. That's the whole point,
That's right.
right?
I
But
agree.
anyway, they're sacrificing what's well, of course they are. Marvel will make Logan buy. Mark my words. That would be a
That would
literal atom
literally be a
bomb.
death sentence to that
It would
character.
be.
Yeah.
But
There's there's just certain characters where that makes absolutely no sense, and Logan's one of them.
yep.
It doesn't make any sense for him to have some aberrant sexuality other than heterosexuality. It just doesn't. That's just not who he is.
Mhm. Yeah. And no, it shouldn't be that way. But they, of course, that's what they do. And they say, no,
Of
it's
course.
canon. Fuck off. All right. But here's the thing. So we got ourselves an Irishman, an African, a Russian, and of course, Wolverine's a Canadian. He's not American.
He is the good Canadian. We
Yeah,
found
the
one,
one
and
we
he's not
like.
even real.
Yes, Jeff.
Uh,
Wolverine does play for the Packers. He is an outside linebacker, and watch the hell
that's right.
out because he's got
He's
something up his
literally
sleeve.
got claws.
Yeah,
Watch
literally.
out.
Yeah, it's dangerous. But anyway, let's move on here. Then of course we have
Golly, my boy.
our German. Yeah. Yeah, he is a German.
Our German devout Christian.
Yes,
That's what
very
we have
devout.
there.
Yes. And
Uh, I love Nightcrawler. I think Nightcrawler, one, he has some of the coolest powers. The bamfing around is awesome.
it is
I think that people always say they'd want to fly. I don't know, man. Teleporting would be pretty cool. That'd be pretty cool. Especially when you can do it like him and it's basically instant. That's pretty good. You could really get into some trouble with that. And you could basically fly because what's to stop you from just keep teleporting in the air? Basically the same thing. Um, but no, I love me some Nightcrawler. I don't think they'll ever do him justice in the big on the big screen. The one in the movie was okay.
it
Like
was better than I thought it would be, dude.
it was a lot better than I expected. Yeah, but you're never going to get the devoutness of his faith, right? In
Right.
a movie, I just don't see Hollywood ever doing that, and doing it properly. And that's a huge part of what this makes this character work because the idea of a character who looks like a devil, who is a deeply spiritual believer, is just such a cool dichotomy, and the way that he portrays it. I think in the television show, in the animated series,
Hmm.
when they introduced him, they that episode, if you've ever seen it, go watch it. I don't want to bastardize it by misquoting it, but it's beautiful when it talks about his faith and how he talks about his faith,
Yeah.
and to the point where it even gets Wolverine to question his belligerence to the idea. That is beautifully done. And even if you disagree with religion or whatever, that's fine. But the fact that the writers of a freaking kids show had the intellectual honesty and capability to make a character that could make one of the other characters question their own worldview and do so in a way that's believable, that's impressive. Impressive and an actual show of respect to this character and to what
Yeah.
this character stands for.
Yeah.
You were
No,
you're not going to get stuff like that very often from modern Marvel. You're just not.
no. And if you listen to Claremont talk about Kurt Wagner here, he basically said, "Well, what do you got to do? You're this indigo blue. You got a tail. You got three fingers. You're a pariah of the nth degree. So you either put a gun to your head and pull the trigger, or you figure it out, right?" And that's how he got him in because he had this idea that Germans are happy, nice people. They're funny, and they're very religious, which I don't know what world Claremont lives in, but whatever. And so he decided to go heavily with the religious, and it was a great move for the character. And of
It
course,
was.
another thing he added on, which is cool because he's an older man. He made because he was working with a circus, and his hero, his favorite character for Kurt here is Errol Flynn,
Right.
and you added that whole combat ability to him and his ability to fight with a sword, or just fight in general while teleporting at the same time was very effective.
Oh, he's. I mean, in reality, if somebody had that ability, they'd be near unstoppable.
Yeah,
Uh, because how do you beat that? Like
yeah,
he's there 1 second, he's gone the next. He can hit you from any direction at any time. It's ridiculous. But I love Nightcrawler.
he's
I
good.
I just I think he's one of like Xavier, where Xavier's power is obscene, but he won't use it unless he absolutely has to. I like when characters have restraint like that, especially heroes and villains too. Like Magneto has great restraint; he's insanely powerful too. Um, I think that that's something that a good writer can do well is write a character, give them something where a normal person or a common person would probably abuse the hell out of it, but they don't, and explain why they don't. Give them a good reason why. And I think that's one of the great reasons why I like Nightcrawler so much is his faith informs everything he does. It's not just something he wears because the character needs to or it was some PR decision. This character's religion, his spirituality, his what he believes all the time. And that's important. If you're going to make a good character, they can't be fake. They
Yeah,
can't feel fake. And that's why I've always loved Nightcrawler. I think he's
yeah,
great. And he's got a great name. Nightcrawler, that's a good name.
it is. Yeah, and yes, Roger, this is Mystique's son, and to show you
Okay.
to reinforce how I've said that Mystique is one of the most evil characters in Marvel. because she is. And this whole nonsense to try to make her a dark hero, or even a hero in the movies is absolutely ridiculous. This bitch had her baby, and she's had several, right?
Yep.
And had her baby, and because there was a literally a village, a group of people with pitchforks, because she can change and make herself look like anything and easily escape, but she can't change the baby. So what does she do? She throws him off a cliff. Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah, it's pretty wicked. Pretty wicked thing to do.
it is. She's a horrible, 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 monstrous thing, and it irritates the hell out of me that they want to make her this good thing. There's nothing heroic about her. She's
No.
evil, pure
Yeah.
evil,
And
and
it's
that's good. I
okay.
mean,
It's
she's a good
okay for
villain.
these characters. Yes, exactly. It's okay for characters to just be evil. We don't have to have these conflicted villains all the time. It
Yeah,
can work if it's done well, but sometimes people have made up their mind of who they are and they're not going to change.
yeah,
They just are. They're of what spiritual people like Kurt would call a reprobate. There's somebody who's beyond saving.
yeah.
They just will not be they're not going to change who they are.
Mhm.
And I think when heroes run into those people, that's kind of fun to play with because obviously heroes should try to save them, right? Should try to bring them, redeem them if they can.
Sure.
But some people can't be redeemed. Lex Luthor, he's beyond redemption. He just is.
He
He's made
is.
up his
It's true.
mind. He
Yeah,
is who he is, and he's smart enough to know he is who he is, right? We don't need a redemptive arc for Lex. We just need Lex to stay who he is
yeah.
so Superman can, overcome him or whatever.
Yeah, and I'm not saying not to use Mystique. She's a great villain, is my point. I just don't like
Yeah.
that the fact that because she's female, they have to make her good. That's what it is. That's the whole thing. She's a female, therefore she's got to be good, and that's the
Because there's
nonsense
never been
behind it.
an evil
'Cause she,
woman in the
right,
real
it's
world.
ridiculous. I mean,
Ever.
because she's a good villain. And just keep in mind, like another one of her children was born without powers, and she just abandoned that. Just
Yeah.
fuck that disgusting creature, and left it.
Filth.
Yeah,
Get away
I mean,
from me.
this is Mystique, right? But
Yeah.
anyway, Kurt Wagner, or sorry, Kurt Wagner. But
Wagner.
awesome, awesome. And of course, he's German, right? So moving on here, we have now. I know a lot of people are going to see this as Warpath, and I think but this is not Warpath. This is Thunderbird. And now
Good
Thunderbird
name.
did die a few issues later, by the way. It didn't take long for him to get wiped out. But he is introduced. He is a Native American, of course, and an Indian. And at first, he didn't really want anything to do with what Xavier was doing. But Xavier called because I do not trust a dumb white man. He was very white man bad type of thing. He actually called Xavier Custer in the comic, if I do recall. And
Silly.
you Custer, yeah, he called him something like that. Yeah, Thunderbird. And
That's
but
silly.
Xavier calls him a coward. And kind of he came along to help out. Like I said, they killed him off quick. They did come back with Warpath. I can't remember, was Warpath him brought back, or was it another Native American? I'm not sure. I'm not really an expert on Thunderbird or Warpath, but I do know they killed him pretty quickly after. Nevertheless, Native American, another different character to be joined on to the new Claremont X-Men run. And then
Warpath is a great name.
it is a good name. Yeah, well, it was a better name. Wiped out like his people. That's right, Jiminy. Wiped out. But anyway, another character they had brought in, which is I've always thought was really cool character. I like this particular art because it's done in kind of a Gatchaman style, or sorry, Battle of the Planet style. It's neat. But of course, this is from Japan, Sunfire, right?
Good old Sunfire.
Yeah, and of course, if you remember here, once again, this is not a new character. He is was originally a villain to be fought by the X-Men. You
Yeah.
see here in this original X-Men fighting him. But Sunfire was also very reluctant to get involved with what Xavier was doing. And even at the last moment, he was reluctant, but eventually he did get on board. And then he showed up over the years. This is a character never really get used enough, in my opinion. He's kind of a cool character, but Marvel has so many fire blasters that
Yeah, they do.
they got too
Problem.
many.
Yeah.
Mhm.
You could make your own sub universe in Marvel just of fire guys. It's ridiculous.
It is, it's a lot. And you're right, Jiminy. He was named after the A bomb that was dropped on his parents' head. That is true. That is true. And if you want to actually look at a comic book, I think that really deals with the atomic bombs dropped in Japan, and as far as their after effect, go read the Valiant books. Because the big baddie villain in there, he was actually changed, mutated by those bombs in Japan. He's a Japanese guy. But the Valiant comics kind of deal with that in a cool way. It's very interesting. I like the new Valiant. They lost their way for a while, but they seem to be kind of getting back on. He is a great character. I agree. His Age of Apocalypse version was dope. Says Comic Book Bob. Yeah, no, I like Sunfire. So here you go. We got a guy from Japan. You got yourself a Native American. You got a German. You got a Canadian. You got a Russian. You got an Irish and you got yourself a Kenyan, an African lady. So pretty
Beautiful.
cool. Yeah, beautiful. Alex Ross is awesome. And that I just wanted to kind of emphasize the whole point of it was to have an international team, and I think we've forgotten that. We've forgotten that that was their intention. That's what they were going for. And I thought it was a cool idea. And of course, it went on to Chris Claremont, the Meat Massacre. Of course, we have here's a nice piece of art, another piece
Whew.
of go get them. Look at all those great characters. You got Jean Grey in there. You got Havoc, who was on the team at the time, by the way. You got Cyclops in the back with Xavier, Iceman. You got Sunfire over here, Colossus, of course, Kurt, and of course our girl, just bam in the middle. You get
Just
him,
dripping
Alex.
it.
Alex is awesome.
Oof. He is.
He is, but that's a badass Storm. I had to put it in there. And here's another thing he had from in the actual. I told you they took this giant X-Men and they for each page they redid, as kind of a
Yep.
tribute to it. Here's another little bit from Claremont, not Claremont, Ross, in regards to this is Once Future Past. It looks like, right? But
Yeah.
of course, with Claremont, that led us into, of course, the Once and Days of Future Past here, with which is one of the great storylines. They actually turned it into a movie, kinda in a fair way, three times, something like that.
Yes.
But whatever. And of course, another one of Claremont's great runs was the Dark Phoenix. Look at that piece of art, dude. Look at that.
Old Dark Phoenix. There's another one will never get done properly in movie. Um.
Yeah, it was horribly done what they did. They've done that
Oh,
twice too.
and both times it was just awful.
Yeah, because they didn't
It's a
catch the
shame.
emotion
X Men
right.
has some of the most iconic storylines in all of comic books history. I'd say they might be the single group or comic book that has the most iconic storylines, like as a group.
Yeah,
Um, but they've never really gotten translated to the screen
not
at
well,
all.
not well.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's unfortunate too because I mean there was a lot of lead up to this Dark Phoenix. I mean honestly, you
Yes.
what they did with that long lead up to the Avengers, well went to what the Infinity War and Endgame and stuff like that, is what you really need to do the Dark Phoenix right.
That's right.
You need many
Yeah.
movies to build up to that because it was little by little. But when she, of course, just as the Dark Phoenix, when she just kind of ate the sun of a place just because, oh, that's tasty, and just ate it, and then 6 billion people died on that planet, the X-Men had no choice. We either find a way to contain her or kill her, right? And
Yeah.
this is why Claremont was so insistent, like, no, you need to leave her dead.
But of course,
Yeah,
they couldn't.
they can't. Yeah, but this is a more modern version of the Dark Phoenix. I know, but this art is just look at that, dude.
That is beautiful.
Mm,
Absolutely beautiful.
yeah,
Ah, X Men. I love me some X Men.
X Men. Yeah,
The Dark Phoenix and just the Phoenix in general is genuinely one of the best arcs ever done. And like you said, it was a long drip, a slow drip rather, to get to it, and that's one of the reasons it works so well, because Claremont knew how to pace things and how to do long form storytelling. And that's a big problem nowadays. Is a lot of the people doing these things, they just don't. They'll set up really cool stuff and then just fumble it horribly halfway through or whatever,
Right.
and not know how to either not know how to recover from their fumble, or they just don't ever have the feedback that their shit's terrible. Basically, I'm looking at you, Mr. King. I'll never forgive you for that Mr. Miracle run ever.
Yeah, no,
Um,
that was really horrible too.
it
Uh,
started so
it did.
good,
Yeah,
dude.
well, what a
Oh,
shame. But what you need to do with this is, you need to start out in space at the beginning of your movie, and just have your POV camera coming in, and they're just sitting there having a talk in the kitchen or something, and the camera comes into her, and then we're looking at her through her eyes, and then we pull the camera back, and she has like a little headache or something, right?
mm,
And then just kind of do your normal X-Men fun little story, and then bring the Hellfire Club in another
sure.
movie over maybe two or three movies, and just little by little, the situation, she starts using her Phoenix powers, like, ooh, wow, I'm so strong, and et cetera, et cetera. You really need, I don't know, I would take 10 movies to tell that story properly, and all the way
Yeah.
along you're introducing all these cool characters and all these cool bad guys, and you'd have a nice little storyline you've told, and you ended it in this epic tragedy, right?
Yes.
And it would be great.
Yeah, it would. It could be very, very great if I just don't trust Disney at all to do it. The MCU, the Infinity version of the MCU, up to the Infinity, up to Endgame, and especially up to Infinity War, that's probably the best it's ever going to be,
Yeah,
as
they did a
far
good
as
job.
long form storytelling. They did a fantastic job, and nobody can take that away from them. And they deserve all the accolades. And honestly, they deserve for Endgame to be the biggest movie of all time
That's
because they
fine.
put so much work into getting there, so much good work into getting there, and it paid off. And that's bravo, great. It's a shame that movie sucks, but other than that, bravo, great. The problem is I think a lot of people, and maybe COVID gave people that breather they needed, but a lot of people just had, okay, I'm done. Like, regardless of whether they like the movie or not, they're just like, yeah, that's good. I think I'm good now. That was an ordeal, that whole thing, and they're a little bit exasperated with it.
Yeah.
I think some characters are still going to do well, like Spider-Man, especially when they do a fantastic film like No Way Home, and I think in Batman will still. I mean, these two always do well, right? So I don't think you're going to see total just tanking of the genre, but I just don't see the interest in these long form. Like apparently they're setting up Kang now, right?
Yeah, I
I
guess.
just I don't
I,
see it, man. I
I'm
don't
not.
see the interest there. Hype.
Yeah, I'm not sure exactly what they're doing 100%, because it seems confused to me. But
Yeah,
then again, Disney has got a lot. There's like a civil war going on inside Disney itself. So,
seems that way.
I mean,
Yeah,
how that's going to all work out, I'm not sure. But with the Spider-Man movie, what they did at the end of that movie is, they were able to they basically reset Spider-Man, right? And
correct.
because we've been sitting here saying, what are you doing with Spider-Man? That's weird, that's odd, well, that doesn't make sense, and we know why, because they didn't want because of the deal they had going on with Disney. They didn't want Disney getting money off the stuff they did, right? It's all
Right.
about pure greed, right? But now they decided to kind of reset him, so Peter is back in the Peter Parker apartment as he should be.
Yep.
I don't know, it doesn't make sense, because that Venom, Eddie Brock was brought in, because we saw at the end of the Venom movie, he was in a hotel room. We didn't know, we thought it was the blip, right? The
Right.
5 year blip, but it wasn't. He got pulled over because of Strange's spell, Doctor Strange's spell. But it doesn't make sense because he doesn't know who Spider Man or Peter Parker is. It didn't make any
I
sense. But
think
they did it. They did it because they
yes.
wanted to drop off the Venom symbiote. That's why they
Right.
did it.
And I think that what they were implying was that the Venom symbiote knows who Spider-Man is and has at some point already been interacted with a Peter Parker in another
Maybe.
universe.
Okay, fine.
Um, which is fine. It's just why? Okay, so all of the people who know got sucked away, right? So why did any of the Venom symbiote get to stay?
Yeah,
That's
yeah,
weird.
yeah. But they're resetting Spider-Man is what they're doing.
Yes,
They're
yes, it was
resetting
a
him.
big reset button, and good
And okay,
because
fine.
it was a good reset button. It was what needed to happen to
Yeah,
make. If you want Tom Holland to be Spidey, he's
I
got
would
to
rather
have someone.
not.
Well, me too. But I would rather. I personally still think Toby's the best,
Oh
but
my God,
he's a
dude.
little
No, no, hold
old.
on. I saw. Obviously, I've watched the movie now. by the
I
way.
see that.
I mean, you can tell. And it's hokey as hell. But you know, all comic book movies are hokey. This is far more hokey than I expected it would be. But whatever. It was a movie made for kids and families, is what their intention was, and it was a smart move, I think, because you have the COVID thing. People hadn't been going to the cinema, and people just kind of universally like, oh, a Spider-Man movie, I'll take my kids out. You know, why not? And they made what, $800 million off of this film. So good for them.
Oh,
You
they made
know,
more than that. They made over a billion.
well, no, I
It
mean
was the
domestically.
huge. Oh yeah, domestically, yes.
um,
Worldwide, they made tons.
right. But anyway, I get why. But it is much more of a kiddie family movie than the first one was. Now I didn't see the second one, but the first one wasn't that hokey. This one, the new one, is very much a family kids movie, and
Hmm.
I'm not knocking that. That's fine. It's not really what I want, but that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that at
Hmm.
all. Spider-Man has always been kid friendly. Um,
That's right.
but the thing that didn't shook me, but the thing that struck me was this. You decided to bring Willem Dafoe back into your film.
Yes.
That's a very dangerous thing to do,
Yes.
because he is Willem Dafoe. You
And
see,
he's a master.
and he's a monster, is it what he is? And
Yeah.
my God, because the beginning of that film, up until Willem Dafoe came in, was boring and not very good. It wasn't really good. The beginning, it was way wacky hokey, and I was like, oh, what the hell are they doing with this? And then Willem Dafoe showed up, and it changed,
It got
right?
serious.
And we needed a lot more Willem Dafoe in that movie. I will tell you that. But you know who else? You know who surprised me was Toby
Hmm.
Maguire. Talk
Hmm.
about presence, dude. That,
Yeah. He's
but
he's still Spider-Man to me.
he
I'll tell you
is.
right now.
And the problem is those two, well, Willem Dafoe, which doesn't surprise anyone, but Tobey Maguire as well. They they upstaged everybody in that movie,
I
everybody,
agree.
and it
I
showed
agree.
how your new little leader group, you know, with because it's not Spider-Man anymore. It's the Spider-Man team with MJ and Ned and Peter. It's the team. I have no clue why those other two were around. I mean, I understand them being his friends and showing up here or there, but they were in the whole movie. Why? It doesn't make sense, especially with MJ. She did nothing but stand there. And how many times he said, I couldn't do this without you? It's like, really? She didn't do anything. What are you talking about? But Ned as well, and they of course decided to give him some wizardly powers, whatever. Spoilers, by the way. Uh, but
Yeah.
but but it shows you how bad they are, how poor their acting is having those two guys in. But you know who else they upstaged? Benedict Cumberbatch,
Yeah.
who was mailing that shit in, dude, without question. Jamie Foxx has never been a good actor, but he was definitely mailing that in. Who else? They made Doc Ock way too hokey to be cool, and that actor can be cool, but they went and
Mm.
made him hokey. Okay, whatever. But I mean, they upstaged everybody, I don't think it's good for you. Andrew Garfield was certainly better than the others, but he's always the hey, I'm Andrew Garfield. I mean, you know, fuck Andrew Garfield.
Fuck Andrew Garfield. That's what I took away from all this.
Yeah, but I'm just saying, um, it was fine. It's not really my kind of movie, but I have no problem with it whatsoever. But I thought it was a strange choice to put those actors in there because boy, you're showing how low the acting is quality with your three leads, right? Because they don't even begin to compare. And keep in mind that Willem Dafoe and Toby were hardly in the movie, right? And that
They're in the mostly in the last act.
right, and it was such a big impact. And then another thing, what are they doing with Happy Hogan's character? That was insulting to me. That pissed me off.
They did kind of make him a cuck, didn't they?
Yeah, and it
Uh,
was, I don't know why you do that. And you didn't need to. There was no need
no.
for it. It was just a throwaway thing. And then you have basically where he's got kicked to the curb by May. And May is just kind of this ditzy character anyway, which I don't care for May being portrayed that way anyway. But then in the end, he's sitting there at the funeral site. It's like, why? Why'd you do any of that? It's dumb.
Well,
But
the real reason they really answer that question is because they needed to prove that nobody knew who he was, right?
Yeah,
And
no,
they
I
need
get it.
that was literally the only reason he's in that movie because everything else that he contributes is irrelevant. He's only there to because he's been in all of the movies with him, or pretty much all the movies with him. So he's only there just to prove,
Yeah.
hey, yeah, the spell worked. Nobody knows who he is. That's
Yeah,
it. That's his
yeah,
purpose.
yeah, and you're right, Jiminy, but I just thought they were a bit disrespectful. He has always been comic relief. You're right. I just thought it was a bit harsh. But it didn't matter. Like I said, I'm not against this movie at all. It's just not really my kind of movie. I thought it was fine. I think it's a good family movie. Um, the only real major critique I would give it, which I mean, it's just one of those things they do for convenience, and that always irritates me when they do this. There is no way in any universe that Doctor Strange would do something that stupid.
Yeah, I agree. But that's an MCU problem with Doctor Strange in the MCU. He's
Yeah,
always been stupid, and I don't like that. I
yeah,
don't dislike Benedict as him. I think he does what
yeah.
he's told,
He's
and he does
fine.
it very well. But the decisions that the character makes are just dumb. They're
They
just
are
dumb. Like,
stupid, and they have just like Infinity War. They have him arguing with Tony like a couple of teenage boys.
yeah,
It's dumb. Having him argue with Wong in the same way, it's dumb.
mhm,
He would never make that mistake.
yeah.
But I mean, so
I
that
did like the Wong thing though because it bugged me, and I had been thinking about it. Like, wait a minute, Doctor Strange has been gone for 5 years. Who's been doing his job? Because his
Wong,
job doesn't go away.
yeah,
So
yeah,
Wong. Okay, yeah, that
yeah,
makes
yeah.
sense. That makes
But
perfect sense.
that would be my only really major critique.
Yeah,
That and the CG on the lizard was very poorly done.
it
Um,
wasn't
uh,
great. That
yeah,
was cheating.
so a lot of the other CG was great, of course. When Disney's involved,
I really liked the thing I liked the most about it was the Aunt May scene where he gets his little motto. That was well done, I
that
think.
was cool.
And the ending where he is still hasn't learned his lesson. And the person who teaches him his lesson without saying a word is Tobey Maguire, the older Spider-Man. I
Oh
really
yeah,
liked that.
and he did it without a
Uh,
word. I mean,
without a word,
many
without saying
times
anything.
Toby didn't say anything, and he stole the scene. My
Yes.
God, dude. I didn't. I mean, I always liked Toby, but I didn't know he was that good until
Yeah.
putting him next to the
Oh,
frickin'
Toby's
cardboard
amazing.
plate that is Holland.
Toby is an actually amazing actor. There's that movie with him and what's it? It's about a soldier with PTSD, but I can't remember the name of it. But that movie is I think it's like Brothers or something. That movie is unbelievable. If you haven't
Yeah,
seen it, his performance in that is top tier legendary. And Tobey Maguire as Spider-Man, I don't think we understood it at the time was a get because that boy can act.
yeah,
He
he is
can
good.
act.
And Andrew Garfield having his crying moment because he was able to save Zendaya and not Gwen. I fuck you, Andrew Garfield, many times over. But no, like when Toby stepped through the portal that Ned made, he didn't say a word. He just kind of looked over and he kind of stepped in, but it was like, boom, dude. Right? And what did old Andrew Garfield when he showed up? What do you do? Hey, I'm Spider-Man 2. I'm Spider-Man
See,
3.
and that's the thing I
Hey.
never liked about Andrew's thing is the tone of him was for me always off in his movies
Everything
and
he
in this.
does is goofy, dude.
Yeah, it's either too goofy or it's total douchebag, and not douchebag in like an endearing way, like just douchebag. In his movies, when he would always came off to me as a douche. Whenever he was Peter, when he was Spider Man, it wasn't as bad.
It was
But whenever they
quippy.
had him
It was
doing,
better actually.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, whenever they had him doing it as Peter, he came off as such a dick, and not like a charming kind of dick, like a dick.
Yeah,
Nobody
no,
wants a
that's
dick.
Andrew
Nobody
Garfield.
wants a
That's
dick.
what he is,
Yeah,
right? But you have other problems with Holland as well, in a different vein, though.
yeah,
Holland's like, no, ma'am,
yeah,
that's Holland. I mean,
yes.
it's like what? I mean, I
Well,
don't know.
Chester, since we're talking about Spider-Man, I said I was going to review. I'll do it quickly. I was going to review the two games,
Oh,
the
right, right, right. Yeah.
Spider-Man Parker one and the Miles Morales one. Let me share my screen because I have it set
Oh,
up
you
here. Hang
do.
on.
Okay. Well, I was going to show it for you. Let me come over to the other side then.
Hang on. Let me get it. Okay. Let's go to the shared screen. Let's start with everybody's favorite web crawler, the man himself. Is it showing? Because I can't see it.
It is, although your screen
Beautiful.
is very truncated and thin for some reason, but it's all right.
Truncated and thin. What? Is it really? Weird.
Yeah, it's very scrunched, and I got you full page too.
Very
No, it's
strange.
it's it's the way that it's sharing your screen. It's not your fault.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Um. So anyway, this game here, Marvel's Spider-Man, is very good. Let's just start there. It's very, very good. It has a good story. It has a very Peter Parker story. He's the Peter Parker, the guy they have playing this. I think the voice actor is perfect. He has just the right amount of snarkiness to his voice, to like the way he delivers his lines and things, to where it doesn't come off as abrasive, and it comes off as charming. And the writing for him is very charming, which is important because one of the reasons why Spider-Man's so successful is because Peter is so likable. He's a
Mm.
charming dude, but he's also kind of annoying because he's real snarky to the bad guys especially.
Yeah, no, it's
Um,
cool. That's cool. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
so they got that right in the game, I think. Uh, and that's important to me as a huge Spider-Man fan that they get Peter Parker's character right. And he does feel like Peter Parker. He does behave like Peter Parker. He's kind of absent-minded about being Peter Parker because he's so busy being Spider-Man. The game starts with him getting evicted. Stuff like that. Tropes about Spider-Man tropes, I guess you would call them, but you need to have them because they're important to the character. Um, there are some things that are annoying. Like this isn't the Spider-Man that I grew up with insofar as his relationships and things. But for the most part, I think they got it right,
Mhm.
and they did a very good job. Now, as far as the game part, the gameplay is phenomenal. It's so much fun. The combat's fun. The combat is fast paced. It's fluid. You feel like a total badass if you're doing it right. Um, and obviously, swinging around the city, which is something they made sure to put a lot of effort and time in,
Right.
is just fun and fluid. And it doesn't. It very rarely feels like work, if that makes sense, to get around. It's just very fast paced. It doesn't take much thought. You can just go, go, go. And that I really appreciate because it has this freedom to it.
Yeah.
And it's very important. If you're going to make an open world Spider Man game, you're going to have to get that correct.
Yeah. And they
Yeah.
and they got a lot of physical achievements too, which I appreciate.
Yes.
Instead of just
Yeah.
bang, you got this little badge, screw you. It
Yes.
reminds me of the old Wolverine game where you
Yeah.
would get achievements and they're actually applicable in the game, right?
Right. Yep. And I really appreciate the story of this game. I think they got basically all of the characters right or right enough, especially in their interpretation. Which there is a little bit of reinterpretation. The one that got the most, I would say, besides Miles, who is in the game, but he's mostly a side character entirely, is MJ, Mary Jane. She's a redhead at least, thankfully.
Yeah.
She's nowhere near pretty enough, but that is what it is. But they made her into this journalist and all these things instead of an
Well,
actress and
she's an
everything.
actress model. I mean,
Yes.
it's weird.
And that's fine. Man, the journalist girlfriend for a superhero. Have we not had enough of that
Yeah,
yet?
please. Yeah, please.
Uh,
Yeah.
and the parts where you actually play as her are completely unnecessary and boring. And it just really reeks almost. I don't want to say it was agenda based. That's why they exist, but I'm pretty sure it is. Because they wanted to give a female character some shine, I guess.
hmm
And whatever, fine. They're
Why
quick, they're easy, and you can
why
ignore
is
them for the
not
most
being a
part.
successful actress and model shine enough?
I don't know.
Yeah,
I don't
it's
know. Why
weird.
is not being a wonderful partner to Peter shine enough?
I
I don't
know.
know.
And Brian, you are right. And to be fair to the Garfield, he was the best Weisenheimerist Spider-Man of the three.
That's true. That's true. That's a good word, Weisenheimer. That's a good word.
It
That's a good
is.
one. And this game here does that very well. He has that style of humor and that quippiness. There's a wide variety of things you can collect. There's fun side activities to do. Unfortunately, this game suffers from the open world game problem,
Mm,
which is played this game before. It's just a different take on it, meaning you have to go and do towers and unlock areas, and
hmm
you have to go and do collectibles that are in various places that you have to get to, and the same basic formula that all of these open world games have had
True.
since
You
Assassin's Creed came
right.
out.
Well, you
Uh,
know who did that really well was DC Universe Online.
yeah,
Those
he did.
collectible things were done really well.
Another game that came out recently about the same time as this, Ghost of Tsushima, does it very well as well. The
Yeah.
exploration in that is a lot of fun.
Oh,
Um,
you know another one that did really well? Infamous.
yes, yes. And this game does it very well too. I did pretty much all of it because it's just fun to get to make the way you make collecting stuff fun is travel has to be engaging. It doesn't have to necessarily be the most fun thing in the world. Ghost of Tsushima's isn't, but it's engaging because it's so atmospheric in the way it's done. And in this one, it's just fun. It's just fun to swing around as Spider-Man. You land on the street, and the civilians start waving to you and taking pictures, and it's just fun, man.
Mhm.
You know when games were just fun,
Yeah.
where they put that first. That's what this game does. They put fun first,
Yeah, that's good. That's
and
good. I
I
agree,
think
Jiminy,
it's
by the way.
I think it's a really important part of Spider-Man, the character overall, is he's fun. He's not supposed to be serious all the time. It's not supposed to be dour. He's not supposed to be brooding and moping. He's also supposed to have fun. That's what one of the things the quips for the audience are for, to get you to chuckle, right? To go, oh, jeez, right? To get you to roll your eyes at his puns and just have fun and have it be a little lighter. And I think that this game does that very well. Obviously, it takes itself serious when it needs to, but most of the time, it's just lighthearted and fun. And
Yeah.
I appreciate that in a Spider Man game, especially because Spider Man, like you said, is a hero for all ages. He's not designed to be an edgelord hero. He has his edgelord moments, but he's not. That's not what he's for. He's for everybody. Everybody should be able to pick up a Spider Man comic and read it and enjoy it. That's the goal, and that's
Um,
fine. There's no problem with that.
Eric is being a geezer again.
What do you do?
He brought up, he dared. He was bold enough
Nicholas
to bring
Hammond.
up Nicholas Hammond. You go, Eric. You go.
There's people who have been saying there's rumors that Hammond might be in the Doctor Strange movie as like an Easter egg,
Oh,
and I say,
really?
you know what? Why not?
Why not?
Why
Yeah.
not?
Why not? That
Um,
movie looks horrible, by the way.
yeah, I
My
don't know
God.
about that movie.
Because well, they this Spider-Man was a setup for that movie because
Yes,
Strange did a very stupid thing and he's going to be punished for it, as he should
which is
be.
good. Which is good.
It's
That's good.
stupid. My God, dude. Anyway.
Yeah. So this game here, I would give the original Marvel Spider-Man. It's a full game with all sorts of stuff to do. It's not super duper long, especially for some of these open world, and it's kind of an RPG because there are skills to unlock and gadgets and things. And you'll unlock them all if you play through the game enough. But you can pick which way you unlock them, right? So you can
Mhm.
decide what paths to go down
Lots
and
of
things.
costumes, lots of
Lots of
little
costumes.
Easter egg stuff, lots of that. Yeah.
And speaking of the costumes, this here, the white spider, I don't like it.
No.
But luckily for me, I didn't have to use it because as soon as you start the game, you can either pick this or the classic suit, pretty much right out of the gate, and that's what I did. I switched over to the classic suit and played the game with that for most of the game until I got some other suits and whatever and tried them out. Um, I don't know. I don't mind the white spider itself. It's everything else about it. I don't like the little things on his hips. I don't like the fact that it looks like he's wearing tennis shoes. I don't like the white on his fists. Like it's just, I don't know. It's just not for me. But they tried something different and whatever. And they give you in game a reason why he has a different suit. Like they actually
Yeah,
show that
that's true.
to be a thing.
Yeah.
So that's
Uh,
cool.
well, Jiminy, the problem with Holland is he's a sycophant. That's what he is. And one of the, like I said, I don't know why they decided to lean more toward the kid family movie rather than middle of the road like the first one. But whatever, that doesn't matter. That's not important. But one of the big problems they had with, they can't separate him from his buddies, Ned and MJ, right? They can't separate them, even though
Well,
they have no need to be there. However, let me
I think they
finish.
have.
Though they may have now, which would
Yeah,
be a good thing because she's got more important things to do. You know,
let's hope.
but
Yeah, I hope she does. Please go do
yeah,
more important things.
but
Go away.
here's the because there are other people they could bring in, but here's the problem.
Yeah.
Holland himself is a sniveling little feminist that is so full of white guilt that he can barely stand his own presence. This is what
True.
Tom Holland is, right? And he's constantly apologizing for his existence, right? The actor.
Yeah.
right? And the problem with Zendaya, right? She's kind of a normal girl. Now, I've never cared for her because she has no acting ability whatsoever, and she's a token. She's a literal token, right? Which isn't her fault. She's taking money and getting paid. Good for her, man. But the reason she's there is stupid. But and nevertheless, she's still just a girl, right?
Yes.
And therefore, there's no way she can have any kind of chemistry with Tom Holland as
It's
a
funny.
human. And it translates because neither one of them are very good actors. It translates into the movie because there's
Yeah.
zero chemistry between those two. And I
Well, it's
honestly,
funny
I
you
don't
say
blame
that,
her. How
Dexter.
could she have chemistry? I'm sorry.
It's
Go ahead.
funny you say that because apparently they're allegedly dating.
Oh,
And also,
bullshit.
it's a perfect lead-in to this next part I'm going to talk about because there's 3 DLC chapters for the original Spider-Man game. It's called "The City That Never Sleeps" is the name of this little story, and the first one is about Black Cat. And Black Cat is the exact opposite of everything you just said. Zendaya is her and Peter's chemistry is ridiculous in this game. They did
Yeah,
such
because
a good of making this character and making her feel just sensual and sexy. A freaking video game character, like to the point where you're like, man, Peter, whew, that'd be rough to be around all the time and be Peter because she clearly would let him have his way with her, or at least she pretends that way. So it would be tough to deal with in his shoes.
she's a home wrecker.
And yeah, exactly. And at this point, him and Mary Jane are together, so very much would be a home wrecker. And woof, she's just dripping with charisma and sexuality.
I think
And
I
it's amazing that in this day and age, they actually made a female character that overtly sexualized.
well, this
Like
game
she
is not
is.
woke though.
The first one has a little bit here or
They
there,
all everything does, but it's not
but
ultra woke.
it's not egregious at
Right.
all. It's completely missable
I
if it's
think
even noticeable.
I think I triggered the chat.
You did a bit, I noticed.
Uh,
But Black Cat, the first DLC, Black Cat is fantastic. It's got a pretty good storyline where Black Cat does a very Black Cat thing and of course is lying to Mr. Parker because that's what she does. And I very much loved the first DLC. It's the problem with the DLCs is they're very short. They're only a few hours of content besides like side activities, but the storylines are very short. But they're good. They're very well told. The characters are all very well done. This is the best one in my opinion. The first one, mainly just because I'm a big Black Cat fan. I think she's awesome. I really like when a woman character is allowed to be feminine and sexy and doesn't make apologies for it. And that she doesn't at all. I very much appreciated that. This story feeds right into the second one, which is about our boy Hammerhead and him doing some things, trying to take over the city. Basically, now that Wilson Fisk is out of the
I should
way,
do a spotlight on him. That he has a good story actually, history, his
does
origin. Yeah.
Hammerhead in this one though? He's okay. He's not bad, and he's obviously very menacing. There's a part right at the beginning where he basically breaks the police chief, who is Spider-Man's friend, I guess you would call her, and he breaks her. He breaks her mentally, and he puts what he calls the fear in her, and it's a very good scene. Brutal, actually, very dark. Um, and that's well told. His arc gets a little bit silly near the end, but
Mhm.
for the most part, it's pretty well done. I can't not recommend it. I'd say it's if you like Spider-Man, you like Hammerhead, and the mafia fighting Spider-Man, which is basically what you're getting here.
Mhm.
I actually like that. I like it when his enemies are a little bit smaller scale, personally, and that works good. This one has as our girl Silver Sable comes back. She's in the main story. She's a big part of the main story. She has a little bit of a redemptive arc in the main story, where Parker's goodness just kind of makes her reassess her own world. And she comes back here because Hammerhead has been stealing all of her tech and using it to basically take over the city. And she doesn't like that very much. So she comes back to deal with Hammerhead, and her way of dealing with him is, of course, to kill him, which Peter won't let her do.
Right.
And it's a pretty good conclusion. Sable gets some good screen time. I like Silver Sable as a character in this game. I think they do her very well. She's very much tough bitch 101, but that's okay if it's done right, and I think it is done right.
Yeah, that's good.
Um, and
Elro-
she's charming when she needs to be, right? They
Elrod's
they
being
let her lower her guard down a little bit to be
well, that's
charming.
good. Elrod's being
So
good.
overall, the first Spider-Man game, the Peter Parker one, I would say is a solid, probably about a 4. It's really good, especially if you're a Spider-Man fan. out of 5. You're really gonna like it, I think. I don't think it's gonna offend anybody in so far as like a Spider-Man fan. I think it's kind of about as good as you could get of a Spider-Man game without it being an actual, just genuine masterpiece. But it's really good. You haven't played it, if you have a PS4 or PS5, get it. It's worth it. Play it, and I don't think you'll regret it. As if you're a Spider-Man fan, it's very well told. I didn't give any real spoilers to the story, but it's a very good story. It's a very Spider-Man story. Here's the
It
biggest
starts
knocks
out
I
with a
have
negative
for it.
man, right?
The first part is, yes, the first villain you fight, it, I believe, if I remember right, is the Shocker, because he always is,
Yeah,
and
sure.
then
Well,
Negative Man is
that's
the
like
guy.
rats
Yeah.
in the dungeon. So
Yes. And then negative, which actually the Shocker stuff's pretty fun. It's actually not that bad. They did a good job with Shocker. But then Negative Man, yeah, and or Mister Negative is his actual name.
Mr. Negative, yeah.
Um, and Mister Negative's okay. I don't dislike the character. He's a more modern
Yeah,
character, I
he's
believe.
kind of a boring character. I mean,
He's a
his
little
origin
bit
story
boring.
is boring. Yeah.
Yeah, they actually redo his origin story. I believe a little bit in this game. I could be wrong about that, but I think they retell it. They do that for a couple characters, like Doctor Octavius's origin, things like that. But it's well done, and it feels like Spider-Man with the way they do it. It's a very Spider-Man story, and I think this game won't disappoint. Now, to get to some of the cons, one of the major cons I have with it is is that Mr. Negative is kind of boring. Um, all of the villains, all of them, are too justified in a lot of ways. So the main contention here is, of course, surrounding one of the other characters who isn't really even a villain to Spider-Man yet, and it's Norman Osborn.
Oh,
And there's a lot of contention around him, and for the most part, they're pretty much all justified in their hatred of the man. Like he's done some terrible things to them. Um, so I don't know. I think we need a little bit more black and white in some of our villains. Not all of them, but some of them just need to be bad guys. It's
yeah,
okay. Like it's okay to have just a guy be just a greedy prick. We don't have to
yeah,
understand him.
that's true. Now,
And
would you say, just real quick, is this 616 or is this Ultimates Universe?
I think it's its own universe. It could be Ultimates, but I think it's supposed to be its own. It's definitely not 616 because the police department isn't called the NYPD.
Oh, okay.
It's PD. I think it's the PDNY. I think that's the Ultimates that do that too. But I don't think it's supposed to be Ultimates because I think it's supposed to be its own. There's some variations here or there. Like Miles' story is I think unique to this game. I think it's completely different from anyone else.
Okay.
And we'll get to Miles in a minute because I also played through his game. But the Peter Parker one is really good. Like I said, it's a really strong Spider-Man game. There are some downsides, of course. I think the big bad's heel turn that obviously everybody knows is coming kind of happens a little too quick, and that's to me a problem because the pacing loses its way right there at the middle of the end. But that's okay because it's still believable. It just for me it was a little too quick, and that's what not one of the things that knocks it off for me. Another thing is I don't really like the retelling of MJ turning her into this gung ho journalist and all
It's
this
dumb.
stuff.
It's
I
dumb.
didn't like that.
Yeah.
Other than that, I think every other character was pretty good. I think they rushed a little bit with it because effectively what happens, and this is not really even a spoiler because it was in like the trailers. Sinister Six shows up, a new version of it,
Yeah, well,
and
there's been many versions of that, so.
yeah, and it's like really first game we jump right into that. I think that's a little soon, but they do a good job with it, so it is what it is. Um, but other than that, like I said, I highly recommend it. It's a good game. It's one of the best superhero games ever made. Might even be the best, in all honesty. It's definitely in the top tier. And if you love Spider-Man, I cannot recommend it enough. Um, Now we have to get on to Chester's favorite Spider-Man,
Well,
Mr. Miles Morales.
let me interject before you get into it.
Yep.
Now, I think the story they did with Miles in the Ultimates is fine.
Mhm.
Peter's dead. He's inspired by it. Of course, his origin story is way too similar. They should have made it
Yes.
different. My problem with it is not the Ultimates Miles. The fact that he's been brought into the 616, they should give him. He should be called Ghost Spider, not
Well, I
Gwen
actually have a
Stacy.
better idea for you. We'll get to it. than Ghost Spider. I do like Ghost Spider too. That would
I'm
work
just
too. But
saying,
I have a better one.
I mean, because think about all the alternative Spider-Mans we have. We got Scarlet Spider, you have the Supreme Spider. I mean, there's so many different Spider-Mans and they have different names, and that's fine. Why is he Spider-Man? He should be something different. He's not Spider-Man. And now that he's in the 616. That's my problem.
Yep. Well, funny you say that because in this one, he is in the first game. He's in the first game. Like I said, he's a kid, a very young kid, teenager. That kind of is a big. He's a big Spider-Man fan. He really really likes Spider-Man. He's a huge Spider-Man super fan, I guess you would call him. And he eventually, his dad is a police officer, and basically it's not even really a spoiler because it's kind of unmissable. And if you're going to play this game, you should already know all this stuff. His dad dies after Mr. Negative attacks City Hall. He dies
Ooh,
saving people, basically. And that's his supposed to be like his Uncle Ben moment, right? He had a tragedy happen in his life. The problem is he doesn't have what's the word I'm looking for? A catalyst to have a character revelation, a character change from the Uncle Ben moment. The
right,
reason the Uncle Ben moment works for Peter is because Peter was such a dick when he first got his powers, especially. He was self-serving, he was greedy, he wasn't the man that he would eventually become because, and I think the Spider-Man movie did that perfectly, it wasn't his problem, right? He missed the part where that's his problem because the guy did screw him over, but still, he still could have done something to stop somebody from doing something bad, right? And he didn't. And he learned his lesson. Miles doesn't have that. All
yeah,
Miles has is he's a victim, basically. Something bad happened to his
right.
dad that he couldn't stop. That's his guilt. So basically, this is a recurring problem with this version of Miles Morales and really all versions of Miles Morales. He's boring. The character's boring. He has no flaws or no major flaws. Most of his flaws are that he's just too good-hearted. What? That's boring.
Well, it's
It's
typical
boring.
Mary Sue crap, right? And
Yes.
Jiminy, we're not allowed to make that joke because we're far too pale.
Yes. And yeah, he does have his mom's last name and not his dad's, which is very weird because his mom and dad were together, so I don't understand that. But he's just a boring character. He doesn't have any great character flaws. The biggest flaw I would say he has is he's naive. And he's young, so of course he's naive. And he's a little bit and he cares a little too much. Which aren't really character flaws.
No.
They're come from somebody typically with a good heart. That's a problem. Peter, on the other hand, as a juxtaposition, is he's dishonest. He does lie to people. He is a little bit slothful when it comes to doing things that aren't about Spider-Man. He is very forgetful about other responsibilities that aren't Spider-Man related, to the point where he's late for work and things all the time and stuff like that. And he has a temper. And it's not a terrible temper. It doesn't get him into too much trouble, but it's a little prevalent. And these are character flaws that are fine with him having. Plus, his character grew after what happened with Uncle Ben,
Mhm.
and because of that, because we already saw him as very flawed in a flawed state, he can be a little bit more virtuous because he's in a way earned his virtue, right? We've seen him be not virtuous, and now we've seen him learn his lesson about responsibility, and that's why he becomes virtuous and becomes such a good character. Miles doesn't have that. Like I said, his Uncle Ben moment doesn't teach him anything. There's no teachable moment for him personally. It's just, oh, that hurts. That's not a hero. It's not heroic. There's no heroism in that. That's just, everybody goes through that. Everybody loses a parent. Everybody loses something. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
There's no grand aspirational heroism to that. Whereas Peter's there is because of his actions, his uncle got killed because he could have stopped that guy and he didn't. At least that's how he views it, and you could agree with him or not, but that's how he takes it. And
Right.
he learns from that. Miles doesn't have that, and because of that, Miles is very, 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 very boring as a person, as a character. The
Mhm.
game is fantastic. The game is fun. It's just as fun as the other version, the Peter Parker version. The combat, I think, is maybe even a little bit more fun because you have the electric powers and you have the invisibility that you can use pretty much whenever you want, and that adds another layer of what you're capable of doing. So one of the cool things you could do is you can get in a fight with a bunch of guys and just disappear, right? Just go invisible, right? And they freak out. They what? The other Spider-Man can't do that. That's kind of fun, right? You can kind of
Sure.
play with them a little bit.
Which is
And
why he should have a different name.
yes, and I
Because I mean,
think it's cool.
well, yeah, but I mean, look at the way they do. It's always Spider-Man and then Miles Morales. They always have to do
Exactly.
that. And why? Just
Yes.
give him his own name, dude.
And that is my biggest complaint, politics aside, which we're going to get there in a second. Politics aside, in this game, he is also Spider Man. So now there's two Spider Man.
It's dumb.
And there's no delineation between the two other than they wear different costumes. You know, they're both Spider Man. And that's stupid. there's no way to not make that stupid. It sounds stupid.
Yeah.
It wouldn't work conversationally. It doesn't work when people are calling for Spider-Man. Which one are they calling for? Because what if they need the Miles version with his electric powers,
Peter
or
1, Peter
the
2,
Peter?
Peter 3.
Yeah, it doesn't make it's dumb. It's dumb, 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 dumb for them to both be in the same universe from the get and have the exact same name as a superhero. That doesn't make any sense, and it doesn't work. It just plain does not work. And it does take away from the game because they do make a point of talking about it a little bit, right? Where some of the villains will call him the other Spider-Man, or you're not the real Spider-Man. And again, it's painting Miles in a victim narrative. And I don't like that because he's actually not a victim as a person. He doesn't take this stuff and play, oh, woe is me, at really any point. He does a little bit, but not any more than what would be normal, especially for a kid. He's supposed to be a teenager. He does get up and go and try and help people. That's a good credit to his character. But he doesn't have anything to relate to insofar as a flaw, or insofar as a flaw that he's overcome or trying to overcome.
Right.
And that's a serious problem with when you write a hero. A hero
Yep.
should be relatable. Part of the hero's journey is internal. It's not just external. And he doesn't have that. And that really rings through in the writing and in how he interacts with the villains, because I don't really cheer for him. I want to cheer for him because he's not a bad guy, but I don't cheer for him because I don't believe him. I don't believe in him because he hasn't given me a reason to believe in him.
Right.
Just him doing things like, superhero stuff. Okay, cool, but that's not why we like heroes. That's not why we like superheroes. Not just because they do cool things, it's because they're good people and they teach lessons, or at least they're supposed to,
Yeah.
about how to be a good person
And
and
overcome flaws. I mean, that's
and
part of
overcome their
you need
flaws.
that. It's
Yes.
important. Yeah.
And he doesn't have any. And here's the biggest problem. We're going to get into it here. This is why he doesn't have any. In the game is that. That is in the game right there. When you get one of this suit here, which is actually a pretty cool suit, I liked it, wore it a lot.
It is cool. Yeah.
You have to have this exact scene play out and look over his shoulder and a big Black Lives Matter mural right behind his back.
Mm-hmm.
And encapsulates the entire problem with Miles Morales. Is he is not a character. He is a message.
Yeah, he
He
is.
is the message.
And it's too bad because he didn't have to be.
No, not at all.
Yeah.
He did not have to be that at all. He could have been so much more. And in this game, they try to make him so much more. But because of the message, and when this game came out, which was 2020, you're not going to get that. You're going to get this. You're going to get a lot of preaching, a lot of political stuff. And the worst part about it is the way they try and give him character is they lean into horrendous racial stereotypes.
I'm sure they
So,
do.
one of the side missions you get to do with your uncle, which is the Prowler, in case anybody doesn't know,
Right.
with your uncle and Mr. Aaron Davis, is you get to make basically like a mixtape. Which, okay, that's kind of cool, but it comes off as this is just what black people do. That's how it comes off as. It comes off as nothing more than a racial stereotype that this is just what they do. They go around and make music everywhere they go. Like, and it's just like, it's to me it came off the same as, remember when Hillary Clinton was on some talk show and she pulled out hot sauce from her purse? Like she just walks around with hot sauce all day every day. It's just this weird racial stereotype pandering that these corporations and whatnot do that always comes off as cringy to me.
Right. Well, I
And
mean, Hillary Clinton is the most shallow candy glass
oh,
lady
of
you'll ever
course,
find, right?
of course she is, yes. And The reason why I think the big knock for Miles, like I said, the gameplay's great. It's strong, it's solid, it's just as good, and in some ways it's a little bit better than the first one because the stealth's a little better because you can go invisible. Um, but everything else is weak. The main villain is pretty weak. It's the Tinkerer is the main villain that he
Ooh,
fights.
okay.
But it's a reimagined Tinkerer who is a friend he's known for years, and she's also a person of color. So of course she can't actually just be a bad guy. No, no, no. You see, at the end they must redeem her because she's not white, so she doesn't get to be the evil person that the only white guy in the main story is. There's two. I'm sorry. There's two of them, and they're both bad guys. One is irredeemably evil, and the other's Rhino. Uh, so yeah, there's that kind of
Jiminy.
stuff. All of the non-white characters, all of them that actually are characters and not just random beat 'em up thugs, every single one of them ends up being a good guy. It has that serious problem that we're seeing now that's becoming a trope of the non-white saints, right? Every non-white character has to be some form of a saint or else they get, ridiculed on Twitter.
Right.
And that's a serious problem because it's so hard to tell good stories if you can't give characters character flaws. This is just a little graphic. There's obviously more you can give them, but the more of these you can give a character and still have them be likable, still have them have something that is endearing, more often than not, you're going to make a better character
Right.
because you're going to make a more realistic character because people suck. It's just the truth. We do. We all have character flaws that make other people miserable to some degree. Might not be a lot, but somebody somewhere you're probably pissing off just for existing. And that is one of the ways you can write a character and make them realistic in how they behave. Um, Miles doesn't have that. His villains don't have that. The main actual main villain, which like I said is some rich white guy, because of course it is, isn't he's not terrible. He's actually a pretty good villain, but there's nothing really likable about him. He's so like how in the Dark Knight, the Joker,
Yeah.
he's completely irredeemable. But
Yeah.
he has things about the way he portrays himself that are just humorous.
Because he
And
doesn't give a
that
shit.
Yeah, and that gives him a charm to him, right?
Yeah.
I call him deliciously evil, right? Like there's something about him that you just can't get enough of, even though he's pure evil.
You know.
This
I
guy is pure evil, and you just really want him to go away.
Yeah, I do have to interject. Your
Yeah,
unbalanced list that needs a 26 because it's bugging my OCD, and the 26 should be lesbianism.
lesbianism. I like that. I like that.
It's good
Now,
fun.
overall, for Miles Morales, it's much shorter. It was supposed to originally be a DLC, and it's obvious, right? It's far shorter than the original game. The storyline isn't really bad. It just has a lot of modern Hollywood tropes that are a problem, whether it's racial stereotyping or other forms of stereotyping, or just the main character, just doesn't have anything really negative you can say about him for him to. There's nothing he overcomes other than random video game challenges. Basically, is what it feels like,
Right. Yeah.
and that's a serious problem. The ending is actually, even though they do the hero redeems herself at the end, or the villain, I mean, the ending of what Miles actually sacrifices at the end and does what he does is really well told. It's well done. It's very good. I just wish I cared about it more, and I wish I cared about Miles more. But because you didn't give me a reason to, I don't.
Yeah.
It's that simple, and that takes a big knock off the game. But if you like the Spider-Man world, I'd say play it. I don't see any reason not to. It's the gameplay itself is really fun. The combat is really really fun. And if you like the Arkham games, the combat's very similar. It's a little bit easier than the Arkham games, and by that I mean it's a little bit easier to get big combos. Like there was one mission where one of the side objectives was to get a 85 or a 85 hit or a 90 hit combo, and I tried it the first time and I got hit, and I was like, screw it, I'll just finish the thing. So I go back to it later, and not even really trying, I pulled it off, and it just felt good, right, to pull off
Yeah.
that big
Sure.
of a combo. But that's just a good example of how fluid and intuitive a lot of it feels and a lot of it plays. The people who design the actual game in the game are some of the best in the industry. They did a great job. And the Miles game, if you can stomach the cringiness of the political messaging that they shoved into it,
Hmm.
um, and the fact that Miles is just unlikable, and not so much that he's unlikable in a bad way, he's just not, he's boring. Uh, I think you'll have a good time with it. So both Spider-Man games, I recommend people play. I think the Peter Parker game, which is a much more full experience, is the better game, and has a better story and a better main character. But the other one is still pretty strong, and it sets right up the new game that's gonna be coming out next year. So if you like the series, I would recommend playing it.
Yeah.
And overall, I would give the Miles Morales Spider-Man out of 5. I would give it probably a high 2.5, like a 2.75. So it's a good game. The biggest drawback is Miles. He's just boring. Now, you said what they should rename him to. I
Hmm.
have an idea for that, Chester.
Hmm.
And I thought I had a picture of it, but apparently I forgot to get it, so I'm going
Well,
to get it real
Jiminy
quick.
says the brown recluse.
The Brown Recluse. No, there is a suit in this game called Purple Rain, and it is basically
Pepper
inspired
rain, pepper
inspired by the
rain.
Prowler, right?
Yeah,
Because the Prowler's his uncle, and you do side things for. That's what the suit looks like right there.
yeah,
I think that looks awesome. First of all, and second of all, I think a great idea if you're going to have him and Peter in the same universe, have his uncle. His uncle does a face turn because, of course, he does, and have him sacrifice himself to save them. And in honor of his uncle, he just becomes the Prowler. He can keep all of the same powers, he can keep the webs, everything, and just be the Prowler. And still,
yeah.
and this suit right here
It's
is
possible.
just, I think it's awesome. I think that's an awesome looking suit. That would be fantastic on him. It's a nice contrast to Parker's suit, which is very, red and white and blue and black. And this is much a different way to go with it. And it's not, I don't like Miles' actual suit, the solid black with the red spider and stuff. It's boring. Like Miles, it's boring.
Yeah,
There's not a lot going on there. And this right here is not boring. It's really like eye catching and vivid. So I don't know. I just think that'd be a good compromise. If they're going to keep Miles around, which I have no problem them doing, I don't think they both need to be named Spider-Man. That's stupid. So just have him be the problem.
yeah. And I
What?
agree with Jiminy. If Black Lives Matter, then give Miles Morales his own identity. I agree.
Yes, and that's
Yeah.
the problem. There's the other problem. Jimmy, you actually just reminded me of it. In this game, they made Miles literally just. I'm going to say it because it's the truth. He's just urban Spider-Man. He's just urban Parker. He's as smart as Peter Parker. He creates his own gadgets like Peter Parker. Anything Peter can do, Miles can do just as well. And
Or
that's a
better.
problem because he's not himself. He's not his own character. And I don't care about him because one, I'm already attached to Peter. I already love Peter. So I don't want to see Peter upstaged by some guy,
Right.
right? I don't want to see that on a consistent basis. I don't want to see that. That's not appealing to me as a Spider-Man fan. Whereas if you went a different way with him, and the way I would go with him is instead of making him a nerd and a science nerd and an engineer and all these things, make him a jock. Make him a good-hearted jock who just gets spider powers. Pick a reason why he gets them. In this
Well,
game, he gets them from an Oscorp spider that bit him. Um, and it's a totally different character, like almost like a Flash Thompson type character.
yeah, but
For Peter to he doesn't really relate to him, and that way there's something they can clash over. Because right now they're basically the same dude. They don't have any. There's no
right,
contention
which
between
was
them.
the intention. It's a race
Yes.
swapped Peter. And
Yes.
and they didn't, and then they made a huge mistake with it because it's in the Ultimate Verse, so that's fine, right? Well, and they had it, and the good thing they did was Peter's dead, he's inspired, he comes back. Okay, cool, right? That's not a bad
Mhm.
idea. But what they should have done with Miles is I go the opposite way. He's a super smart engineering nerd tech. He
Mhm.
builds a suit to emulate Spider-Man.
Mm.
Would have been a
Yeah,
much
that could
better
work.
choice because
That
with
could work.
Gwen Stacy or Spider Gwen, they did it in a sensible way. It's just an alternate reality along the way. Instead of Peter getting bit by the spider, Gwen, who's right next to him, gets bit. Okay. And that's a way to do it. You're simply saying, well, this is an Elseworld version of how it happened, and then she went through all the similar things that Peter went through because she got bit by this spider. But having Miles Morales get bit, 2 decades later by the
Yeah.
same spider or whatever it is, it's like what?
Yeah.
It's dumb, and it would have been cool if you had a techno Spider-Man with Miles Morales, and he's is basically kind of an Iron Spider type of character.
And
Uh,
it would have worked, even in this game, it could have worked because Prowler is basically just that. Well, not so much like a fan, but he's just got gadgets in a suit,
yeah,
right? He's not super powered at all, and he's cool. He's actually one of my favorite characters in the whole game, and he has the most heroic character arc in the whole game, right? Because basically, what happens is, like I said, his dad died, his brother, Prowler's brother, but he had already retired as a thief, basically a criminal,
right,
and he was just working as a normal guy. He had gone straight, everything. Well, he comes out of retirement to protect Miles because he figured, once he figures out Miles is the new Spider-Man, he comes out of retirement to protect him, and that's beautiful. That makes sense. That's a character progression that makes sense.
hmm
He doesn't want his nephew to get himself in over his head. So he gets it, he goes back to something he doesn't want to do, and by the end he actually embraces the Prowler a little bit and starts trying to help people. And that makes sense. That's a character progression that makes logical sense. I believe that could happen. Um, that's a heroic arc. If
okay.
they had given something like that to Miles, I'd be happy. But they didn't.
I'm going to have to deal with the rabbit. Just give me a
Uh-oh.
second. Okay. Rabbit. First of all, the comparing a Judge Dredd video game to Spider-Man doesn't make any sense because it would be completely radically different. However,
Yeah,
I'd love a really good Judge Dredd game.
me
I'd
too.
love it.
That'd be
I'd
great.
love it.
That'd be great.
And your question as to why do all superheroes wear spandex? Because it's, balls are free. It's important.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
Uh, we can't all wear
And
giant shoulder pads with chains dangling off it that would weigh us down and get caught on everything. Probably better
true.
not to do that.
That's true. It's a
Yeah,
good point.
yeah,
But no, I think there's a lot of different ways they could fix Miles. Unfortunately, because of this, where's it at? This right here, that's not going to happen. They're just no interest. They don't want to deal with anything that will look like backlash because of it. So they're not going to change him up.
yeah,
If anything, they'll end up changing Peter's name for crime. They will. They'll make him some other kind of Spider-Man or whatever. Um, and I think that's just egregious.
it is. It is. And especially if you remember, if you read the Ultimates like me, and you saw the progression of how Miles came along, the way he started out, just like Miss Marvel, talking about the Pakistani one. His progression was fine. It was like, okay, I see what they're doing. But when basically his origin was exactly the same as Peter, I was like, well, that's a mistake because Peter already
Yeah,
existed. And actually, the Ultimates version of the death of Peter Parker, spoilers, I actually bought for my kids, for my son particularly, and he loved it. Right, it was a
yeah,
good storyline. It was emotional, but yeah, they screw, and of course just like they did with Miss Marvel, they had to change it for the message, which is how it started, and they ruined it because of it. Because like Miss Marvel could have been a cool character too, but they can't get out of their own way. And it's unfortunate they're doing this with Miles because he wasn't that way at all. And if you look at
yeah.
him in the Spider Verse, into the Spider Verse, which we all know that Nicolas Cage was the best part of that, but otherwise, his character introduction stuff was fine. There was nothing wrong with it at all. He was
They
endearing and nice character,
reworking him,
but he
working him.
wasn't BLM. That's
No,
for damn sure.
no, no. For crying out loud, his dad's a cop.
Yeah,
And his dad's like a cop, right? And he is in the first Spider-Man game too. You actually do like a side mission or whatever with him. I think it's actually a main mission, but you do a mission with his dad to try and uncover what's going on.
that's
And
probably true,
so they
right?
do a little bit of character work for his dad, which I actually really appreciated. I didn't mind the character. I thought he was well done. Um, the biggest problem I have with Miles Morales is I want to like Miles Morales because there's nothing egregious about him as a character that I shouldn't like him. But I don't because he bores me. Simple as that. It's not even a political thing. It's this while this is annoying, this Black Lives Matter thing, that's not even the biggest problem to me. The biggest problem to me is that Miles is boring. And there's ways to fix that, as Into the Spider Verse did a very good job of. And there's ways to not. And this game does not do that. It just simply doesn't. And it's a shame because, like I said, the game part is phenomenal. It's so
Beautiful.
good. It's well done. There is another really cringy part that I just remembered. So as we're talking about the message, Black Lives Matter, all this other stuff, there's a part where you're helping out a feast center, which is the shelters basically, and You're going around as Miles, not as Spider-Man, but as Miles, and you're asking people questions to try and figure out a problem.
Mhm.
And so you go
While
up to this
making a
lady
mixtape.
named
Sweet.
yeah, you go up to this lady named Gloria, and she's like the leader of the feast center. Okay, cool. And she tells you to go ask around other people. So you go asking around other people. One of the people is a lady, and without really even without even saying anything at all, she decides that you need to know not only is she Gloria's girlfriend, but she's also helping her. This is basically how she introduced herself. Like I'm Gloria's girlfriend, and I know this. Like who taught? Nobody does that.
Well,
Why would Miles need to know that information, especially since it never comes up again under any circumstances? Does it matter again?
yeah.
It's just we. Hey, look, we have a gay character. Guys, there's a gay character. See, it's so cringy. It's just like man, that wasn't necessary. That wasn't necessary at all. Uh, that kind of stuff. But overall, it's a good game. It's not really a full game, so if you have like a PS4 or 5, if you don't have both of them or either of them, I would recommend buying the Ultimate Edition of Miles Morales, and it comes with both games and all the DLC. So
Oh, okay.
that's by far the best bargain right
Cool.
there.
Well, there you
But
go.
it's a good game. Like it, if you like Spider-Man, you'll love it. I think that's what
Sweet.
I think.
Yeah, no, I think they've unfortunately kind of screwed up the Miles Morales character. But do keep in
Yep.
mind into the Spider Verse or whatever they call that movie. Not only did they kill Peter once, they killed him twice.
Yes.
Just remember that. Don't ever
Yes.
forget. Anyway, I did have a couple other stories. Let me see if we got a little time left, so let's go take a look at that.
Let's do it.
Alrighty here. All right. Now this is go ahead.
Alleged Shazam! Fury of the Gods, which isn't a bad title. Spoilers reveal major cameo and a character's death. Uh oh.
Now,
Now the major cameo, if I had to guess, is Black Adam. It's The Rock.
well,
I'm
first of
assuming.
all, this Augustine here has made a typo. It shouldn't be major cameo. It should be major cameos. And it seems to me that the whole movie is nothing but a cameo. Because supposedly there's a leaked plot, and we know how they do with that. But
Yes, sir. I'll be right back real quick.
yeah, yeah. But what they do in this is basically it's the same as the first movie. It's the same thing. He's conflicted about himself, and of course we have the Marvel family, and they have their own conflictions. So it's the same movie, but there's just cameos galore. Billy Batson, of course, he's a boy. He has a big old crush on Wonder Woman. So there's a cameo from her, and of course the Black Adam cameo will probably come at the very, very end. But there seems to be a lot of them here. Let's take a look here at some of the cameos they talk about. There was a after trailer scene here with Mr. Mind. This parasite here. He's not in there, so there's none of that. So and this character here doesn't show up either. We don't know if we're going to get a Black Adam at the end. We might. We do know he's not going to be part of the story. Because, like I said, it's called Fury of the Gods, but with the god they're dealing with is Atlas, the DC Atlas, and he doesn't show up in the movie at all. Instead, his daughters show up, I guess. Okay, so that's the threat, dealing with the daughters of Atlas, I suppose, or something along those lines. But some of the other cameos that they're talking about here, other than Wonder Woman, who shows up because he's got a hard on for her. I get it. Is Shazam's not dead? He's back. Spoilers. Okay, which is fine. We also have Calypso. She's showing up. All right, okay, sweet. All right, fine. And we have There's some kind of affection going on between Freddie, who's one of the family, of course, and Rachel Zegler's character, whoever she is. And But it just seems like there's a lot of cameos in this, and it's kind of like just by reading this article, and I saw another article as well. It seems almost because you got other cameos here, right? There's so many cameos coming out in this movie that it feels almost like this movie is just a filler to wait for Black Adam to drop with Dwayne Johnson, and then we'll have the matchup in the next one. So I'm asking the question: why even make this movie? If all you're doing is a little cameo-filled movie that's doing the same story as the first one, you're not adding anything really to the story. What's the point? Why even put it out? Just put out the Black Adam movie with Dwayne, and then have there's some kind of cameo with Shazam in it or Captain Marvel, and then lead into your movie. I don't understand it because if you read this article, it really seems like this is just a bunch of cameos from different peoples. Like, oh, I know that. Oh, I remember that. Oh, look at that. I mean, and it's kind of weird. I don't know what to say about it, dude. It's bizarre. And you guys know I'm not a big fan of this movie. I thought the beginning of it's fine. It ended horribly. They brought in the Marvel family way too soon. I also thought that the boy was kind of too old to be Billy Batson. He should be younger. But whatever. I don't know. But it looks like they are going to be focusing more so on the Marvel family in this, other than, especially with Freddy, I guess, than just Billy himself. But I don't know. What do you guys think about the idea that this seems like a filler movie that's just going to have a bunch of cameos in it? Nothing really is going to happen. It's kind of the same as the first movie. And why bother doing this when you could just simply do the Black Adam movie? I don't know. Yeah, I don't know what she's playing, Elrod, but there's a whole bunch of cameos, and you go read it. There's a ton of stuff, and it just seems bizarre to me. That it's like it almost feels like a movie that you shouldn't even bother making. Just wait, you know, cameo or have him in the at the end in the third act of the Black Adam movie, and just lead yourself into the next one. I don't know, or maybe do a Marvel family movie that's not called Shazam at all. Maybe just deal with a couple of those members. I don't know, but it's a very odd choice. Very odd choice. Is Thunder back yet? No, he's not. But anyway, I just want to mention that because I thought it was weird. Don't know what. I don't have much more to say about it. This right here, I thought was an interesting conversation. Marvel's biggest multiverse plot hole is utterly depressing, and the fact that it doesn't matter if you beat a bad guy, there's so many more behind them, right? So it's kind of never ending. And keep in mind that both Marvel and DC are both doing multiverse stuff right now, right? Of course, with the Flash creating in DC, and Doctor Strange causing it here in Marvel. Now, um, I understand why they're doing Marvel's doing the multiverse. It allows them to bring in things and not get as much flack for it. It allows them to do all kind of weird stuff, and in the end, we're going to get some very weird versions of our superheroes because it's an easy and safe way for them to do that. I understand why they're doing it. I just don't know how they're going to wrap it all up tightly because Doctor Strange caused the problem. Kang is somehow involved, and he's a time traveler. So okay, how's that going to work in? Is is Kang even happening? We have a lot of leaks and rumors and stuff that come out about Kang, but it doesn't look like they're going that direction at all. It looks like they're doing Doctor Strange, his mistake in the multiverse thing. Maybe this is just kind of an in between little story they're doing because they want to be able to replace the heroes with race swapped or gender swapped stuff. And then later we're going to get into the next big storyline. I don't know. She might well Elrod play Hera, I'm just saying that that with the Shazam thing, it seems like a non-movie. It's weird, but nevertheless, I think it's a good question. This is a slippery slope to get into with the multiverse because you open yourself up to all kinds of problems, all kinds of stuff, right? And maybe that was their intention. Like Lady Thor, we might be getting just Lady Thor instead of Thor himself. Because we know, with at least with the comic books, and it seems this way going with MCU as well, that they want to replace all male characters. They don't want any male characters at all, unless they're the right minority, I suppose. If you look at the comic books, they've replaced everybody. Everybody has been gender swapped, or even the ones that are legacy, like say Hawkeye. Okay, but you really got to go forward with nothing but a female cast? Is that really what you want to do? Because you're not going to catch a lot of the dudes coming in, especially because you're not going to make them pretty and sexy to look at. They're going to do quite the opposite of that. Matter of fact, if you looked at the Miss Marvel trailer, which definitely looks like a CW show, she's harshly unattractive, and of course that's the intention. So you're not going to get a lot of dudes coming in for that, and honestly, you're not going to look at a lot of ladies either, because the ladies want to see Chris Hemsworth with his shirt off. I mean, that's what they want, right? Especially in a popcorn film. We're not talking about high end drama that's meant to move you or artistically awe you. These are just popcorn films, but it seems like that's what they're doing. And it seems like that's the whole point of the multiverse, is just simply so they can swap the hell out of everything. We know they're going to kill Strange. We know this. We know Wanda is going to become the new Sorcerer Supreme, which, oh well, Wong, I guess he's out. And we got the female Hawkeye, and it looks like they're going to do this across the board. So it seems to me that the multiverse thing might be just a tool for them to set up their new all female set, and then maybe they'll go into the Kang thing. Because keep in mind, She Hulk's coming. We're not going to have Ruffalo anymore, which I don't have a problem with, because Ruffalo sucks as far as a human being goes. But we got
Yep.
female that. I would imagine of course we have Falcon is Captain America, which makes sense actually. But they're going to do with everything, and I kind of wondering, Thundero, and this article is really talking about something different, but I brought it up for this conversation, that this whole multiverse thing might be
Yep.
just a way for them to gender swap everything, and then they'll
Could
go
be.
into a Kang story later.
Could be. Could very well be. I mean, they've already done it to Loki.
Yep.
They've already done it to a few other characters. Well, maybe not gender swaps, but just swaps in general. So yeah, very well could be. And then they have a in-universe reason why it's happening.
Yeah, yeah,
Um,
exactly. So they can explain it, and you can't argue about it because, well, there's many verses.
right.
Anything could happen. But I mean, it's like it really looks like we're going to end up with no male characters at all, especially not white ones, right?
Oh God, how dare you, sir? How dare you, sir?
Yeah. I mean,
Expect there to be white characters in a movie in
Thor's being
2022.
swapped. Hulk's being swapped. Hawkeye's already been swapped. Loki's already been swapped. Um, I don't really know what's left. What male characters would they introduce?
Well,
I
we
don't know.
got we got Ironheart coming.
Ironheart, so Tony Stark's replaced. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, Miss
Um,
Marvel and Captain Marvel are Miss Marvel is effectively a swap, but it's one that's been around for a long time.
it has.
Um, and but as the centerpiece, she was the plan was. I don't think it still is. Plan was for her to be like the main centerpiece of the MCU going forward.
Doesn't work. Yeah.
And yeah, so
Yeah.
basically, Tony Stark got replaced twice. He's going to get replaced in his suit with Ironheart, and he got replaced as like the main character of the MCU
Right.
uh,
Right.
with her.
And of
So
course, because Brie Larson's just pissing everybody off, you go to get Monica Rambeau. She's going to be your
yeah,
main Captain Marvel and main character. So, I mean, all right, fine, you go forward, but I don't think you're going to make the money you did before, because it
no,
looks like we're
I
going to
don't.
have no male heroes whatsoever. None. I mean, other than Falcon, and like I said, that makes sense. If you ever read Captain America and comic books, Falcon taking over for Steve makes perfect sense. It does make sense.
Sure.
But it's a strange choice. And Rabbit's just saying money, Chester money. Fair enough, I guess, but I don't think this is a money maker. I don't
Well,
think
the
this
the
is a
other
money
thing about the
maker.
Captain America thing is Captain America. I personally just want it to be Steve Rogers, but as a character, he's one of the few that I think makes sense being a mantle, because what he is supposed to represent and why the character exists at all. is that's kind of already what he is. And I think it's a little bit more forgivable with that particular character. Spider-Man doesn't make any sense. Wolverine doesn't make any sense. Like that sort. Some characters it can make sense with, and others it's just nonsensical nonsense. And I think Batman it could make sense with, if it was to Dick Grayson anyway. Um, but I think there's a lot of room for that sort of stuff. But when you the only reason you bring in these sorts of like multiverse and all these things, the only reason you bring in that sort of those sort of changes, those sort of events, is so that you can just have no rules. Well, that's not good storytelling. No rules is bad storytelling. There
Right.
has to be rules, and you have to follow them, or else your story doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
When people say we want our story to make sense, we're not saying that we don't want fantastical things. We're saying those fantastical things need to have some form of rules applied to them, and then them rules followed. That's it. That's all we're saying. We have to understand the logic of this
Right.
universe. And if there is no logic, then your story probably is going to suck.
Right. And Jiminy, what I mean by that is Falcon and Steve partnered up, teamed up for years, dude. I just saying if someone was going to pick up the shield for Cap, Falcon doing it is not weird. It's not.
Right. Yeah.
But I get your point. He doesn't have any power. He'd be dead, right? That's true. But yeah, and another problem with the multiverse thing is unless you have really, really good writers, it leads into lots of plot holes.
Yes.
Lots. Yeah, I don't know that I trust the writers they got going on to be able to handle that.
Well,
However,
you just mentioned one in No Way Home, right? Why the Venom thing?
yeah, there
It
you go.
doesn't really make any sense,
No, it doesn't.
and that's a plot hole. There's other ones in the same vein of did this person actually even know Peter was Spider-Man? Why would he be like? I don't think Electro knew that. Stuff like that, and that's the sort of stuff, the sort of trouble you get into, like with time travel, and especially with multiverse stuff. If you don't have it planned out well in advance and have rules that you follow, you're gonna get into those weeds. It's gonna happen. And here
Yeah.
we go. We'll see if they can pull it off, but
Well,
I
yeah,
don't have
yeah.
faith.
I just that I'm just kind of curious if that would the because a lot of people are confused because all the Kang rumors came out, but multiverse doesn't go into Kang. Kang is not multiverse; he's time travel, right?
Right.
And he was oh anyway,
Well,
it
Chester,
just
see, I've heard from Marvel stands that that's the same thing because something quantum mechanics. And I'm
oh
like, okay,
okay,
maybe in
right,
quantum mechanics it's the same thing, but in storytelling, it's not. A
yeah,
universe and a timeline are not the same thing when you're telling a story because the audience doesn't know quantum mechanics, guys. What are you doing? You can't
yeah.
use high level science to justify bad storytelling. That doesn't work.
Well, don't tell Feige that. But I'm really curious to see where they're going because everything we know that's coming is all female.
Yeah.
There's no males that really involved in at
Well,
all.
well, you got Moon Knight. Moon Knight is
Yeah,
coming.
but Moon Knight
Um,
doesn't play into an Avengers story. What the hell?
exactly. No, and I don't think he's going to. I posted in there in the chat a clip of apparently it's a clip from the show, um, and it does still look pretty good. And they are definitely going with a supernatural take, hundred
Which is
percent.
good. And of
Yeah,
course, you got Blade dropping in on that as well. You got over on the Sony side with Morbius. So there are dudes, but I'm talking about the MCU's mainline storyline with the Avengers and stuff. I don't see any of it. The street level stuff with Blade and Moon Knight, fine, that's great. And who
yeah,
knows, they might try to squeeze them into the bit. Oh my God! But who knows what they'll do? It's just really bizarre. And I know that Kevin told us this. He said the next phase of Marvel is all women all the time. He said it,
it's all agenda. It's all about the message. He's
right?
said it repeatedly,
But I'm just
and they've been doing it.
yeah, but I'm just really concerned about I kind of think we might be seeing the end of superhero movies, which makes me sad because it's not going to make money for you, dude. The
No,
guys aren't interested because you're not going to make the girls pretty. We know this. And the ladies aren't interested either. Women want to see the sexy hunk in a popcorn film. That's what they
that's
want.
right.
And it just seems odd. I don't understand where they're going with this, but I guess we should just listen to what they tell us. So, because they're telling us, yeah, it's only female. And alrighty, fine, fine. Anyway, let's continue on here. Now, I had these ones set up. Which one do I want to talk about? Because we're kind of tight on time.
Well, real quick,
Um,
you said we might be seeing the end of superhero movies. I think we might be seeing the end of the massive superhero universe.
we might, yeah,
But as long as movies like the Batman make almost $2 billion, which it did, I don't think that one's. I don't think he's going anywhere. He's still bringing in the money. Uh, so we'll see. I actually hope instead of the end of superhero movies, we see the end of the fully formula superhero genre, the Marvel verse, the way they've been doing their
right,
movies, and they start expanding, which is what looks like is happening with this Moon Knight. So let's see. Well,
yeah.
hopefully,
Yeah, no, and you're right, Jiminy. Seeing as Bucky was standing right next to him, he's the one who should got the
yes,
shield. You're right.
yeah,
You're right.
yes,
But if you go back and remember in the day when Falcon and Cap were together, there was no Bucky in the story at that time, right? And
true.
that's what I'm referring to. It doesn't bother me as much as some other swaps. I also don't have a problem with She-Hulk. I mean, she has her own storyline. I'm just saying that it doesn't look like we're going to get any male masculine character. Well, they're probably going to be masculine ones. They just won't be male. But anyway, now I was going to take some time and go through and look what's going on in Indiegogo with comic books, but I don't have time for that. So what I'm going to do is talk about one that's going on here, and I think it's right here, and I think it's kind of cool. Because if you remember, a while ago, I talked about where is it here? Yeah, the Ascendant role playing game,
Yeah,
which on Drive Through RPG had been number one for many, many weeks. I went and bought it. I've read it. I love it. It very much is taking a huge vein out of the original Marvel superhero role playing game with a little bit of the DC game as well as a little bit of the Master Mutants and Masterminds. It is radically complicated, which I love. I adore that. Right.
sure.
But for the average role playing group, this is daunting. It's daunting. You need a GM who really, really knows the system and can run it. So I love it. For me, but for your average role playing person, and role playing's become quite popular, this isn't gonna work, right? But
Yeah,
nevertheless, I think it's awesome because, in my opinion, this is the best superhero tabletop role playing game ever made because it's all encompassing, and I love that. So it's cool. But what they've done with all their success, they've now dropped a another. This is one of the artists. I'll kind of connect them here. They have a comic book, 96-page graphic novel to kind of introduce the world and the characters. Now, to be fair. When you read the Ascendant book, they do have a big chunk in the beginning that's trying to introduce how superpowers came to be in their world. It's a bit clunky, to be fair. The way they did it is rather clunky. But the vast majority of the book is just the system, because in all honesty, you can drop whatever cosmology you want on top of it, right? But it is kind of clunky. But here they have a 96-page graphic novel to try to clean that up and introduce the characters and what's going on in that world. I think it's cool. As you can see, it's making money, baby. It's making money,
good,
which is good.
good.
That's 30 some $1,000. Pretty good for an unknown comic book from unknown people. Good for them. But of course, controversy has come out of it. Of course, there's controversy. The art in the book's pretty good, by the way. And One of the artists is a Filipino lady, right? Her
Mm,
name is Jinky Coronado, and she's because she draws them sexy, the sexy ladies, you see, and that's not appropriate because women don't look like that, right? So she's getting some
of course,
flack, but she's pushing back, dude. You know what she said?
good.
Well, she said, "Well, technically, I was a beauty queen when I was younger. I won many beauty pageants. I am considered to be attractive, and I think if you ever seen a beauty pageant, you know that women look exactly like this."
Because they
So
do.
she, because they do, and she's a pretty good artist too. So she's pushing back against that nonsense because it's nonsense.
Yes.
Uh, but
It's just envy. That's all it is. The women, these ladies are jealous
yeah,
and they can't deal.
Amaran would be happy. He'd be proud.
That was some boobies. That's
Yeah.
some booba.
This is all Amaran all day. This is a female artist. She's a Filipino lady, like I said, and that's kind of neat, you know. And I've seen plenty. Here's the lady, by the way.
Wow. Yeah.
You are smoking, dear.
Yeah.
You are smoking. But you know, we have met luckily here on this channel. Well, technically, it's the a different Discord, but with the Jordan Quarter, we've met a lot of lady artists,
Yeah.
and they're all very talented, and they do some amazing work. And some of the best females, sexy females I've seen come out of it are coming out of the ladies. I mean, they do have
Yeah.
reference.
Yes. Well,
So
it's also like one thing that a lot of this stuff is right. It's a power fantasy. So a woman will probably be able to encapsulate the power fantasy of being really sexy and feminine a little bit better than a man will, or at least as well as a man will. And they may want it a little bit more than a man would because men want it because, we like the eye candy.
sure,
Well, women can, play with that a little bit more. They can actually have a little bit more of a fantasy to it for themselves. If your normal quote unquote normal woman who probably doesn't look like that, but she can make a character that does, and kind of live vicariously, and men do that too. Um, and I don't see anything wrong with that. But of course, leftoids do. They hate it.
yeah,
They can't
yeah.
tolerate it.
Yeah. And Armron is here, and he's impressed. Very nice. It does look like Aeon Flux, Armron. You're right. Jiminy says, "Your Caucasian patriarchy's coming to an end, Chester. Deal with it." Yes, I understand. Although, do keep in mind, I've spent half of my life nowhere near Caucasians. Yeah.
That's true.
Yeah.
Now,
But
Chester, I'm told under good authority that the
mhm.
Japanese are white now, so
Yes, that's true. They are
they're in the
officially
club.
Caucasian or Caucasoids.
We brought them in.
Yeah, but it is funny when I listen to these privileged young people who have amazingly soft and generous lives given them by governments and systems that provide these amazingly soft worlds that we live in,
Mm,
and yet they have nothing. They complain all day long, and I'm wondering how many of them have actually ever experienced any kind of racism at all. I have, most certainly. I've literally spent my nearly my entire adult life, half my life, outside of the American or Caucasian window. I've certainly
yeah,
experienced racism, and no big deal. You get over it, right? Because there might be racism toward me, but there's certainly no violence. But
yeah,
it is kind of weird. It is also kind of a thing that spreads out with the say the global warming agenda, because it's like you do realize if you go and study, history a little bit, geology, and we have a lot of science that gives us information. You do realize we live inside a window of some of the best weather in human history right now,
that's right. That's
but
right.
yet
And
they
we're
bitch on a daily
dangerously,
daily basis.
precipitously close to having too little carbon in the air.
We are. It is pretty
That
low. That's true.
Yeah, that's the thing they don't want to talk about when you look at like the records, the geological records, the ice core records. Carbon used to be a lot higher
Sure.
in the atmosphere, and the planet at various times has been a lot warmer. Uh,
Yeah.
we are like
Much warmer.
real close to where the biosphere couldn't keep up,
Yeah.
dangerously close.
And technically, we're still in an ice age.
Yes,
Technically, yeah. But I'm just saying it is weird what people complain about because I don't think they really understand what they're saying. But the art here looks pretty good. I'm good on this lady for pushing back, and good for. Oh, that's pretty. I like that scene. That's nice. But go and support these people, man, because the lady artists need support. Man, she is pretty, dude.
she's a
Um,
pretty girl.
a pretty girl, and she's a pretty good artist. So let's support female artistry. Let's all be feminist. Okay, but yeah, go check it out. Like I said, they've already made 30 grand. They got 24 days left. Go support them. Why not? And like I said, the art's pretty solid. They're going to try to flesh their story out here a little bit better. I'm sure it'll be fine. And I'm just happy for the success for these people. They went and they put a lot. If you read the book, like I said, I bought it. It's very try hard. There's a lot of work went into that book. A lot of work, a lot of math, and no joke. So good on this. And if you look at our team here with the comic book, we got the artist lady, which we saw. She's a bit older now. We have a couple other people. We got a bunch of minorities here. Although there she's the cover artist is this Jinky lady. But nevertheless, anyway, support it if you can. Sounds good. Once
I like
again,
it.
this is called Ascendant Star Spangled Squadron. And it is very much a throwback to classic superhero type. Spandex, rabbit, run. Okay,
Spandex everywhere. It's coming.
everywhere. Alrighty. Well,
96-page graphic novel. Woo!
yeah, yeah. It's
That's a
nice.
long one.
It is.
That's
It's
a
good.
long one.
It's good. Well, like I said, I'm sure they'll sell more if they can, but I think their intention with it was to really they had a lot of art already, so why not just kind of drop it out? And like I said, it is the initial. All those kind of books have especially superhero books have kind of introduction to the world, right? In the
Yeah.
beginning, and it's kind of clunky. It's kind of clunky the way they did it. But to be fair, I don't care about other people's cosmology so much. If
Mm,
someone has some unique idea, I might integrate it because I'm always going to create my own campaign world anyway. And the
sure.
system is absolutely sublime. I mean, I love it. It's some beautiful work here. If you do buy the actual RPG, be ready. It will hurt your brain. Yeah. But otherwise, I was very happy with that purchase. Um, I might run it one day here on Bugbear's Basement.
Uh,
I just need to read through it a couple more times to make sure the rules are tight in my head because I'm going to have to be the one to do everything because no one else is going to read. That's a lot of reading. That's 400 pages of math,
mm,
right? It's pretty
yeah.
serious. Now, for a old tabletop nerd like me, that's pure joy. But most people aren't going to do that, right? So if I get it real tight in my head, I might run the game because, like I said, I think it is sublime. I mean, you can create anything you want, and it is functional, and you can do anything you want with a character. It's completely fleshed out, and that's very difficult to do with tabletop games because there's always going to be some hole somewhere. You have to make choices. Is it going to be more action packed? Is it going to be more role playing based? Is it going to be more effect based? It's hard. It's hard. But I think they did one of the best jobs I've ever seen, particularly when it comes to superhero role playing, which in itself is difficult. So, anyway, that's what I got.
That's it. That's what it is.
That's what I got.
What he's got for the day, folks.
Yeah. But that was fun. We had a couple of we had two main conversations, and talking about X-Men is always fun.
That's true.
Yeah.
That is true. That is, in fact, the most true thing you've said all night, Chester.
It probably
Right
might
there.
maybe. Yeah. Yeah. Anyway, all righty, guys. So go ahead and take us out of here, Thunder.
Very simple one. I like it. Hating yourself is a low fate. A life lived dead. Be good to yourself, people. You're the only one of you get.
Namaste. All righty then. Later, guys. Keep in mind tomorrow, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I think we're doing Bugbear Basement. It's been a while. I don't know what's going on with that. I'm not sure what's going on with the bill. I might have to just go ahead and start something, but that's okay. That's more of our guilty pleasure anyway. So, but nevertheless, if we're on tomorrow, join us. If not, we will see you on Thursday for 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We'll be doing a joint recording. Later, guys.